Chapter 1886. We spun a cocoon around ourselves. Xiangyang sighed. He looked at Yin Xinglian, who also had a strange expression, and sat down first. Xiaohua was not as pessimistic as Xiangyang. His eyes darted around, looking here and there. No one knew what he was thinking. Not long after, Xiang Min's communication talisman came again. Sure enough, it didn't find a suitable place, and everyone was rushing here. After a full day, the other 6 gold core cultivators brought their respective disciples to this place. Xiang Min's face was not satisfied. After looking for a long time, he took out an unknown magic tool from his storage pouch and flew several laps around the entire canyon. Finally, he sighed and said, "The 5-element spiritual qi here is relatively mixed. Although it conforms to what I said just now, it is still not the best place to set up a formation." "It's fine. We'll look elsewhere." Zhen Yi heard and immediately stood up, about to fly away. At this time, Feng Shuqing said in a sharp voice, "Fellow Taoist Zhen, don't be anxious." Then he turned to Xiang Min and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiang, the fire attribute spiritual energy in Flame Forest Marsh is abundant, diluting all other types of spiritual energy. Furthermore, the entire terrain of Flame Forest Marsh is filled with magma. Even the area near Western Huang Town doesn't have a place with abundant spiritual energy of all 5 elements. We can't possibly retreat back to Western Huang Town." "Sai, how can I not know this?" Xiang Min smiled bitterly and said, "But if the 5-element spiritual qi is not balanced, the 5-element soul capturing formation cannot be sealed, and the formation's effect will be greatly reduced. Fellow Taoist Xiang knows the situation in Flame Forest Marsh is like this. Don't tell me you don't have any countermeasures," Jiang Zhuchang said with a smile. Xiang Min rolled her eyes in annoyance and said with a wave of her sleeve, "Of course I have a countermeasure, but this Xiang's countermeasures have all fallen on my disciples. Now that they have disappeared, this countermeasure is incomplete." "What do you mean, fellow Taoist Xiang?" Feng Shuqing asked curiously. "It's nothing." At this point, Xiang Min had nothing to hide. "My 5-element sect's 5 elements formation uses the 5 elements magic treasure as the formation core, and uses the 5-element spiritual qi as the formation guide. It's best if the 5-element spiritual qi is evenly distributed and equal. However, if the 5-element spiritual qi is not very evenly distributed, we can also teach 5 disciples with physiques of different attributes how to control the formation. We can let them use their own bodies as vessels to draw in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and spit out the true qi of their respective attributes." "Oh, I see." Feng Shuqing looked at Zhang Zhangqingguang and smiled, and said, "Fellow Taoist, what attributes do your disciples have?" "Haha, Zhang's disciples have wood and earth. My son's disciples metal," Feng Baiqing said with a smile. "So one of your disciples is of the water element, while the other is of the fire element." "Yes, of course." There was no expression on Xiang Min's face. Water and fire are the most opposing attributes among the 5 elements. My disciple is the best. I can't say for other attributes, but my disciple has fire attributes. Can't we find a disciple with water attributes?" Feng Shuqing said disdainfully. "If it's as fellow Taoist Feng said, then it's very simple." Xiang Min shook her head. Although the 5 disciples of the 5 elements formation don't need to control the formation, the changes in the formation, especially the release of 5-element spiritual qi, have to be uniform. If they haven't been trained, I'm afraid it won't be easy. She then looked at Zhang Qingguang and the others and smiled bitterly. "I've been planning with fellow Taoist Sun and fellow Taoist Zhang for a long time. My 5 disciples have also practiced a lot. That's why I dared to come to Flame Forest Swamp. In just a few days, I'm afraid it's not appropriate." Everyone frowned. They didn't expect that setting up a 5 elements formation would require so much attention. Zhen Yi thought for a moment and smiled. "How about this? Fellow Taoist Xiang, we'll go look for the terrain. You teach the technique of controlling the formation to each disciple." Cough, cough. Since the disciples of Jingbo City and Imperial Alchemy School can comprehend it, there's no reason that the disciples of Huangdao sect can't, right? I'm sure fellow Taoist Xiang won't hide it, right? If we find a good terrain and can set up an excellent formation, then let the disciples of Huangdao sect swear a heart oath that they won't teach the formation to outsiders. If we don't have an excellent terrain, fellow Taoist Xiang will reluctantly set up the formation here. How about it? Great. Lu Mingxing clapped and said, fellow Taoist Zhen, you're right. Xiangmin thought for a moment and nodded. That's the only way now. She then asked, which fellow Taoist disciple is of the water element? Their cultivation can't be too low. Lu Mingxing looked at everyone and smiled. My disciple, Li Fengzhu, is of the water element. However, his cultivation is only at the early stage of foundation establishment. I wonder how he'll fare. This. Xiangmin shook her head slightly. The fire element spiritual qi here is very strong. Water element spiritual qi is restrained. Fellow Taoist Feng's disciple has a fire element physique and is at the early stage of foundation establishment. Then, the water element disciple should be at the middle stage of foundation establishment. The middle stage of foundation establishment is best. Is the early stage of foundation establishment okay? Sun Shankong smiled. Without waiting for Xiangmin to speak, Feng Baiqing looked at Jiang Zhucheng and the others. None of your disciples have water element. Everyone shook their heads. What about the Imperial Thunder sect? Feng Baiqing asked Zhenyi again. My Imperial Thunder sect disciples are the thunder and fire elements. There are very few disciples with other physiques. Zhenyi said with a smile. I'm afraid that's the only way. Feng Baiqing was a bit discouraged, but her eyes suddenly lit up again. She pointed at Xiaohua and Shui and said, what physiques do these two disciples have? Zhenyi naturally didn't know. He turned around and asked, Xiaohua, Shui, what physiques are you waiting for? Disciple is of the fire element. Disciple is of the thunder element. The two of them said in unison. That's it. Feng Baiqing said with a smile. Let Xiaohua replace Qing. He's an aura-refining disciple, so his magic power is lower than Li Fengzhu's. Isn't that perfect? Xiaohua was stunned. He couldn't help but smile wryly in his heart. He knew very well that his magic power was definitely higher than Li Fengzhu's. This balance between water and fire still couldn't be achieved. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. Xiangmin shook her head first. Xiaohua isn't an aura-refining disciple. His magic power is too low. He can't cooperate with the other 4 foundation establishment disciples. No, absolutely no. He's just a thunder-controlling sect disciple. If he can attract the fire ape, he'll get a share of the thunder beast's inner core. If he still doesn't do anything, I'll withdraw. Feng Baiqing snorted coldly and said, it's just cooperation. We won't use the true qi inside its body. This flame forest swamp is filled with fire element spiritual qi. Is there a need to take his true qi? Xiangmin had never thought about letting an aura-refining disciple go to the formation core, so she refused without hesitation. But after hearing Feng Baiqing's words, she thought about it for a moment and nodded. Fellow Taoist Feng's words make some sense. However, I'll take a look for now. If it doesn't work when operating the formation, how about letting Qing Hao replace it? And let's do that for now. Feng Baiqing curled her lips slightly and didn't say anything else. Grandmaster. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He called out in a low voice and looked at Zhenyi. I'll listen to fellow Taoist Xiang. Zhenyi said without hesitation. Xiaohua opened his mouth, but he couldn't say a word. He simply couldn't refuse. Soon after, Zhenyi and the others flew away in different directions. Xiangmin stayed behind and had the other disciples patrol around. She took out a few jade slips and handed them to Xiaohua, Qing Hao, and the others. She said, these are the methods to control water and fire in the 5 elements formation. They're all different. Make a hard oath and use your divine sense to memorize them first. Once you return the jade slips to this old man will teach you. Xiaohua and the others made a heart Oath then held the jade slips in their hands and immersed their divine sense in them to comprehend them. Xiangyang took Yin Qinglian and Shui Shui to patrol one side of the valley. This was the side that Zhen Yi just passed by. Xiangyang released his divine sense and scanned the place. Then he transmitted his voice. "Wife, did you see any clues?" Yin Qinglian shook her head. "How can we guess the divine abilities of a golden core cultivator? I didn't even look at them." Sigh. Xiangyang frowned and smiled apologetically. "If I knew that the lightning beast's inner core would be so troublesome, this husband wouldn't have come to join in the fun." Yin Qinglian was rather optimistic and said with a smile, "Now, it's hard to get off the donkey. Husband, don't think too much. Moreover, even if it's as difficult as a lake of fire, this lowly concubine is willing to exchange it for your lifespan. Little junior brother is also willing." Little junior brother. Warmth flashed in Xiangyang's eyes. His gaze couldn't help but look at Xiao Hua, who was sitting cross-legged in the valley. The 5 elements sex formation control technique wasn't too complicated. For Qing Hao, who had never seen a formation before, it was naturally very difficult. However, for Xiao Hua, it was nothing. He only had to finish reading the things inside the jade slips to understand. It was nothing more than combining the formation, controlling magic power, and harmonizing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around him to cooperate with Xiang Min's technique. Naturally, just as Xiang Min said, this thing relied on tacit understanding and proficiency. However, Xiao Hua didn't think he was infallible. While listening to Qing Hao's questions, he also added in a few sentences from time to time. His performance was no different from an aura-refining disciple. Xiao Hua liked to ask questions, so after half a day, he didn't let Xiang Min see anything. 10 days had passed since they had comprehended the method of controlling the formation. The 6 Jindan stage seniors had not sent any messages back, and Xiao Hua and the others had already understood what they should have understood. They only needed to cooperate with each other. "Forget it." Xiang Min looked at the red sun in the sky and waved her sleeve. Several summoning talismans flew out, and she said with a wry smile, "Since they still haven't sent back a message, I'm afraid there's no place more suitable than here." Soon after, without waiting for Zhen Yi and the others to return, she began to arrange the 5 elements soul-capturing formation. In Xiao Hua's mind, wasn't it just arranging a formation? Who hadn't done it before? It would only take half a day or a day to complete it. However, when he saw Xiang Min's cautiousness and how she put the most basic formation flags, formation plates, and other things into the valley, he suddenly realized that the 5 elements soul-capturing formation covered the entire valley. It was a formation that covered an area of several kilometers. It was far from simple. Chapter 1887. As a result, Xiao Hua unconsciously paid attention to it while feeling disdainful. Fortunately, Xiang Min didn't avoid people. She used 2 days to set up the entire framework of the Great Array. Then, according to the order of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, she arranged the 5 array cores one by one. Each array core actually took 4 to 5 days of work. By the time the entire Great Array was set up, nearly a month had passed. Zhen Yi and the others had gradually returned 10 days after Xiang Min finished setting up the array. Zhen Yi and the others naturally didn't stay idle. They held the jade slip Xiang Min gave them in their hands and comprehended it. It also contained part of the control of the formation. After the formation was activated, they prepared to enter the formation and assist Xiang Min in killing the enemy. Xiao Hua's group of 6 naturally didn't patrol around the valley like Xiang Yang and the others. After Xiang Min set up the array core, they were arranged to be in the array core by Xiang Min gloriously. It was to comprehend the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the array core. Xiao Hua released his divine sense and could sense the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth due to the arrangement of the array. However, if he were to use these changes to control his Fa Li, it would be a little difficult. Of course, Xiao Hua's eyes almost never left Xiang Min's formation. Sometimes, even his magic eyes were open. From beginning to end, Watching a great formation being set up was definitely a rare opportunity for Xiaohua. Xiaohua's attention naturally aroused Xiang Min's vigilance as well. Unfortunately, this five-element formation was a grand formation. If it was under normal circumstances, it would be set up by a few five-element sect cultivators. Under the best circumstances, it should be set up by cultivators of the 5 types of physiques, and in the end, the cultivator who presided over the formation would combine them. However, Xiang Min coveted the fire ape's inner core and didn't want the other disciples of the sect to interfere. Therefore, she could only set up the formation by herself. Not to mention the exhaustion, the method of setting up the formation was also exposed. After Xiang Min finished setting up all the formations, her sharp gaze swept over Xiaohua, and she transmitted her voice. Xiaohua, did you enjoy watching it? It's very enjoyable. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and smiled apologetically. I've heard of formations a long time ago, and have also encountered some formations, but I've never seen how they were set up. Now that I've seen Senior Xiang's technique, although I haven't seen the might of this 5 elements formation, but in terms of the area covered by this formation, the formations that I've encountered before are not worth mentioning. Moreover, Senior Xiang, I've also heard from others that the path of formations is the most profound. It's more profound than any mental cultivation method, alchemy technique, or talisman technique. It's absolutely impossible for a formation to be set up by a single cultivator. It should be set up by at least 2 cultivators of the same cultivation level. Elder, how did you manage to complete it by yourself? Xiaohua said very sincerely. This is also what this little one is most puzzled about in these past few days. A hint of pride appeared on Xiang Min's face. He waved his hand and said, You're an aura-refining disciple who doesn't know anything about formations. What do you know? The path of formations is not something you can pry into. What you know is nothing more than hearsay. How can you take it seriously? If a cultivator's Dao technique is profound and he is proficient in array formations, why can't he set up an array formation by himself? Xiaohua bowed. This time, he was just as sincere as before. Thank you for your guidance, Senior Xiang. When he saw that Xiaohua, who had always been somewhat arrogant and unruly, actually thanked him after hearing a few words, he was stunned at first. However, he soon realized that Xiaohua was thanking him because he piqued at his method of setting up the formation. Thus, he raised his brows and looked at Zhenyi, who wasn't far away, and said in a low voice, You're quite obedient and eager to learn. It's a pity that you're not a disciple of my 5-element sect. Otherwise, this old man would have been able to give you proper guidance. Hee. Thank you for your praise, Senior. When Xiaohua saw that he had fooled him, he said with a smile, This little one has been watching for a long time. I've always been looking forward to seeing Senior's elegant demeanor and activating this formation. Let's see what kind of might it has. Haha, don't worry. I definitely won't disappoint you. Xiang Min laughed. He flicked his sleeves and walked towards Zhenyi and the others. Xiang Min naturally exhausted his magic power and mental strength to set up the 5 elements soul capturing formation. He rested in the valley for 3 days before he recovered. Then, Xiang Min discussed with Zhenyi and the others. They would first practice the method of controlling the formation until they were familiar with it. Only then would Xiaohua and the fire ape come over. Naturally, everyone agreed. Thus, Xiaohua and the others sat cross-legged in the 5 formation eyes of the 5 elements soul capturing formation according to the previous arrangement. Xiang Min took out 5 magic treasures of different styles from his storage bag and placed them in front of the 5 people. Then, he flew to the sky above the valley, which was also the center of the formation. He clapped his hands, and a round plate about 3 feet in size flew in front of him. This round plate was the main formation disc of the 5 elements soul capturing formation, the 5 elements disc. Xiang Min opened his mouth, and a mouthful of true essence fell on the 5 elements disc. The 5 elements disc trembled slightly and began to rotate extremely slowly. Then, Xiang Min continuously cast seals on the 5 elements disc. The 5 elements disc sped up its rotation, and as it rotated, it began to emit a bright red brilliance. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the brilliance became a brilliant ball of light. Xiang Min shouted from high up in the sky, "Fire formation I Xiao Hua, inject your magic power into the magic treasure." Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua didn't dare to neglect. Although he knew that he might expose his strength, at this moment, it was impossible for him to have any chance to retreat. Xiao Hua formed seals and injected his magic power into the triangular magic treasure in front of him according to what he comprehended in these dozens of days. Wong, wong, wong. With the infusion of Xiao Hua's magic power, the magic treasure gradually flew up from the ground and slowly flew above Xiao Hua's head. The magic treasure in the eye was suffused with red brilliance. Xiang Min was very satisfied with the 5 elements disc. The ball of light on the 5 elements disc separated a ray of light and shot toward the magic treasure above Xiao Hua's head. In the blink of an eye, the magic treasure and the 5 elements disc were connected together, and the brilliance on the 5 elements disc became more and more brilliant. Just when a magic treasure and the 5 elements plate were connected, Xiao Hua suddenly felt a powerful suction force coming from within the magic treasure. He didn't dare to be careless, and once again used the unique technique of the 5 elements array to absorb the surrounding fire attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth into his body, and then without refining it, he sent it into the magic treasure. However, just when the fire attribute spirit energy in Xiao Hua's body was being transferred to the magic treasure according to the method given in the jade slip, there suddenly appeared a continuous, obscure connection. It was the same as when Xiao Hua used the prairie fire cultivation technique to refine the fire attribute spirit energy in heaven and earth. Although it was only a discontinuous, obscure, the spirit energy sent to the magic treasure was less. At the same time, the light between the magic treasure and the 5 elements disc appeared to be faintly bright and dark. "Xiao Hua," Xiang Min shouted, "dozens of days of comprehension. Is it still not enough for you to comprehend the method of control?" Yes. Xiao Hua was also puzzled in his heart. The method he used was indeed correct, but he didn't know why it would cause a continuous obscure connection. However, Xiao Hua tried a few more times, and the results were usually the same. Chapter 1888. Xiang Min coldly snorted and slapped the 5 elements plate with her hand. The resplendent orange-red brilliance just now was annihilated, and the brilliance between the 5 elements plate and the fire-type magic treasure also scattered. The fire-type magic treasure directly fell on top of Xiao Hua's head. "Rise!" Xiang Min turned around and saw the water formation opposite Xiao Hua. Over there was the Huanhua sect's early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, Li Fengzhu. Xiang Min activated her technique, and the 5 elements plate spun while emitting a light blue brilliance. Immediately, Li Fengzhu also activated the water-type magic treasure on the formation eye. An azure ray of light connected the 5 elements plate and the water-type magic treasure together. That ray of light was overflowing with color, and the azure light constantly flowed, appearing very stable. The 5 elements plate also stopped in the air. "Excellent," Xiang Min smiled and said, "as expected of a foundation establishment cultivator, extraordinary." Then she turned around and said to Xiao Hua, "Xiao Hua, although the water fire formation eye isn't the most basic formation eye of the 5 elements formation, it is the most important in this flame forest swamp. We must first activate these 2 formation eyes. Are you ready now?" Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Disciple is ready, and I'll try again." Xiang Min restrained her temper and spat out another mouthful of true essence. The 5 elements plate spun again, but this time, when Xiang Min used her technique, an orange-red suddenly appeared in the light blue brilliance. As the 5 elements plate spun and Xiang Min poured in her magic power, the orange-red that became increasingly larger until it reached half the size of the 5 elements plate. It was exactly the same as the light blue. Seeing this, Xiao Hua promptly did the same as before. He activated the fire-type magic treasure in the air. But as before, the orange-red light between the fire-type magic treasure and the five elements plate was a faint light, and it was a clear contrast with the azure light of the water-type magic treasure. With a crisp pa sound, Xiangmin extinguished the orange-red brilliance above the five elements plate, and the five elements plate stopped in the air. Xiaohua. Xiangmin's face was very gloomy as she landed in front of Xiaohua. Her small stature, which was much shorter than Xiaohua, actually stirred up an extremely frightening aura. Clearly, Xiangmin was extremely angry. Xiaohua, what's wrong with you? Such a simple control technique. Can't you practice? Zhenyi naturally couldn't let Xiangmin reprimand the Imperial Thunder Sect disciple, so he immediately frowned. Reporting to Grandmaster, Xiaohua also had a wronged expression on his face as he said with a bitter face, although this technique is the method to control the formation, this junior can also comprehend it. It's also normal when I circulate the spiritual energy in my body, but it's inexplicable, producing an unclear and obscure feeling. Obscure. Xiangmin was stunned and immediately understood. She said in shock, You have a fire attribute constitution? Junior naturally has a fire attribute physique. Moreover, it's a concealed fire physique. Xiao Hua's heart immediately quivered, and a trace of unease arose in his heart. Xiao Hua should have a fire attribute physique. Zhenyi nodded and said, Our Imperial Thunder Sect rarely accepts disciples with physiques other than those with lightning and fire attributes. Moreover, all disciples have to be tested before they enter the Imperial Thunder Sect. That shouldn't be. Xiangmin furrowed her brows tightly. Only disciples who don't have a fire attribute physique will have difficulty controlling the fire attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth through their bodies. Difficulty means that they are close to the fire attribute. Then Xiangmin stared at Xiaohua and asked, You have a pure fire physique? This. Xiaohua hesitated and said, This junior also doesn't know, but during the test, there were other colors. What colors? Xiangmin asked. Xiaohua shook his head. Disciple doesn't know. It was tested by others. There were also many people. Disciple didn't understand this at that time. I didn't even know it was a physique test. Really troublesome. Xiangmin also couldn't say anything about the Imperial Thunder Sect. She turned to Feng Shuqing and said, Fellow Taoist Feng, let your sect's disciple try. At this moment, Feng Shuqing couldn't say anything. He could only let Qing Hao take the center of Xiao Hua's formation. As everyone expected, Qing Hao easily activated the fire attribute magic weapon. The orange light above the five-element disc was like the azure light, flowing with brilliant colors. The orange light flowed freely. After that, the metal attribute Li Mian stood on the metal attribute formation core and used the golden light to connect the five-element disc and the metal attribute magic weapon together. The wood attribute Li Mian stood on the wood attribute formation core and used the cyan light to connect the five-element disc and the wood attribute magic weapon together. However, just as everyone's hearts were about to relax, another change occurred. Jinghua City's Bai Mu, an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator who had long practiced the Earth-type array core countless times, was actually the same as Xiao Hua, unable to connect the Earth-type magic treasure with the five-element disc. In fact, he was even inferior to Xiao Hua. The dark brown light was intermittent, almost unable to connect. Zhang Qingwang's face immediately turned ugly. He first scolded Bai Mu, but Bai Mu also felt wronged. He had practiced the technique for a long time and was already confident. However, just like Xiao Hua, when the spiritual energy of heaven and earth flowed through his body, it produced an obscure state. Zhang Qingwang frowned, looked at Xiangmin, and explained, Bai Mu was personally taught by I. His physique is earth attribute. Could it be? Fellow Taoist Zhang, can you show me the magic tool used to test disciples' attributes? Xiangmin couldn't say this to Zhenyi, but she didn't have any scruples with Zhang Qingwang. Zhang Qingwang shook his head. That thing is only used to test disciples' attributes. It's not usually used. Why would I need that thing? Feng Shuqing also smiled. If you don't have a magic tool, then you can only look at spells. Which fellow Taoist can practice such a useless spell? When Feng Shuqing said this, even if someone practiced it, they definitely wouldn't make a sound. Sigh. Xiangmin clapped her hands and took out a fist-sized bead. She said helplessly, "This is the 5-element bead of my 5-element sect. Although it's not used to test the body's attributes, it still has this effect. Fellow Taoist Zhang, please ask your sect disciples to come over. There's no need to circulate or anything like that. Just hold in your hand, hold your breath, and wait quietly." Yes. Seeing Zhang Chengwang's signal, Bai Mu hurriedly stepped forward and respectfully took the 5-element bead in his hand. However, when the 5-element bead entered Bai Mu's hand, there was no change at first. After waiting for a while, a dark brown mist formed in the center of the bead and then quickly spread toward the walls of the bead. However, before the mist reached half of the bead, a faint green mist appeared and mixed in with the dark brown mist. Although there wasn't much of it, it was very obvious. Sigh. Bai Mu has an earth and wood constitution. Xiangmin sighed and took the 5-element bead. She said, because there are very few wood attributes, ordinary magic tools can't distinguish them. This 5-element bead is very sensitive to the 5 elements, and it has the power of a magic tool. Of course, it can distinguish them. Then, she glanced at the 5-element disc in the air and explained, although Bai Mu only has a small amount of wood attributes in his body, the formation's control technique is only effective on earth attribute spiritual chi of heaven and earth. When he inhales earth attribute spiritual chi of heaven and earth, he will naturally become sluggish. This way, he won't be able to control the earth attribute formation core. Io, what should we do now? Zhang Xinguang was instantly stupefied. Not only him, but Zhen Yi and the others were also stunned. Which fellow Taoist disciple has an earth attribute? Xiang Min shouted anxiously. But after shouting a few times, no one answered. They didn't have many disciples with them. So who would think of having a 5-element physique? Even Xiang Min and the others didn't think of bringing 2 spares. Xiang Min looked at everyone looking at each other and could only say, "Sigh, if it really doesn't work, then we can only be the formation core." Fine. Zhen Yi nodded. This formation is related to the success or failure of killing the 2 beasts. If we can trap the 2 beasts in the 5-element formation, we'll be far stronger than a golden core cultivator. However, after Zhen Yi finished speaking, the 7 golden core cultivators looked at each other. Unexpectedly, none of them walked out. None of the 7 golden core cultivators had an earth attribute physique. It can't be. Xiang Min was dumbfounded. Yes, earth attribute physique was the most common attribute in the cultivation world. Perhaps 5 out of 10 cultivators had an earth attribute physique. Moreover, earth attribute physique was even more common in the entire Dawn Rain continent. Almost all of the secular people had an earth attribute physique. However, it was precisely because earth attribute physique was common that their aptitudes were slightly lower. Those who could cultivate to foundation establishment or golden core realm were fewer than those with the other 4 attributes. Damn it! Zhen Yi slapped his thigh and laughed. I really wish I had an earth attribute physique right now. Zhen Yi was joking. Lightning attribute physique was rare in the entire Dawn Rain continent. Its cultivation speed was much faster than the usual 5-element physique. Moreover, the Imperial Thunder Sect's magic arts were most beneficial for lightning attribute cultivators. How could he neglect the essentials and focus on the trifles? Sigh. I'm afraid I have to make a trip back to the sect. Xiang Min looked at everyone and asked, which fellow Taoist is willing to make a trip back? I have to preside over the formation and can't be delayed. However, now that things had come to this, who would want to go back? If he left and someone else coincidentally came, the formation would be completed and the 2 beasts would be killed. Wouldn't they lose their inner cores? Xiang Min knew what everyone was thinking and could only say, why don't any fellow Taoist send a disciple back or send a message to Western Huang Town's transportation formation? Fellow Taoist Feng, your Huangdao sect seems to be the closest to Western Huangtown, right? Zhenyi thought for a moment and smiled. Why don't we ask fellow Taoist Feng's disciple to make a trip back? Your Imperial Thunder sect isn't too far away, right? Why can't Imperial Thunder sect's disciples make a trip back? Feng Shuiqing smiled coldly. Zhenyi spread his hands. My Imperial Thunder sect only accepts lightning and fire attribute physiques. We don't accept earth attribute disciples. Feng Shuiqing was speechless. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua isn't lightning or fire attribute. What attribute does he have? I'm not sure about that. He definitely isn't earth attribute. Zhenyi smiled. Humph. Feng Shuiqing pointed. Whether he's earth attribute or not, can't we just test it with a 5-element pearl? Then let's test it. What's there to be afraid of? If he's earth attribute, I'd be happy, Zhenyi said without a care. When Xiangmin flew into the air, she pointed her hand. The dark brown dot of light appeared between red, blue, yellow, and green. Then it gradually expanded until it stood on equal footing with the other 4 lights. Xiaohua also activated the Earth Attribute Magic Treasure and guided the Earth Attribute Spiritual Energy into it according to the method to control it. Then, he poured it into the Magic Treasure. There's a problem. Xiaohua was originally looking forward to the obscure and even sluggish appearance of the wings. Who would have thought that the Earth Attribute Spiritual Energy would slightly flow in his body without any obstruction and smoothly pass through under the control of the Heart Sutra? Whoosh! A dark brown brilliance immediately connected the 5-element disc and the Earth Attribute Magic Treasure together. It was as solid as the other 4 light belts. Great! Xiangmin was overjoyed. She pointed her hand, and the 5-colored 5-element disc that had just stopped spinning began to spin again. Moreover, as Xiangmin poured in the spell, it continued to accelerate. What's going on? Xiaohua was stunned. He was almost stupefied as he operated the Heart Sutra. He extracted the little Earth Attribute Spiritual Energy from the air and sent it into the Magic Treasure. I originally had a Fire Attribute physique. How did it become Earth Attribute? Xiaohua suddenly remembered the obscure, true energy when he practiced the Prairie Fire Heart Sutra. Buzz, buzz. A series of noises pulled Xiaohua out of his thoughts. He saw the 5-element disc making noises in the air. It was spinning so fast that it was almost impossible to see its shape. The 5 light belts that connected the Magic Treasure also gradually changed from thin strips to wide strips. Then they gradually expanded until finally they covered the entire valley. Quick! Xiangmin shouted in the air. The 5-element disc suddenly stopped spinning. The 5-colored brilliance on the disc also suddenly scattered into a ball. The 5-colored brilliance mixed together and gradually became turbid. Then it slowly became clear until finally it became transparent. It revealed a 5-element disc that seemed to have not moved at all. At the same time, the brilliance of the formation in the valley also overlapped. It was similarly turbid and clear until finally it became transparent. An intact valley was revealed. However, Xiaohua's group of 5 who were originally sitting cross-legged in the valley, and Xiangmin who was in the air, had all disappeared. Fellow Taoists, please enter the formation. According to the records in the Jade Slip, familiarize yourself with the formation. Xiangmin's voice sounded in the air. Zhenyi and the others scanned the area with their divine senses. Not only were there no traces of Xiaohua and the others, even the origin of Xiangmin's voice was not the slightest bit strange. Zhenyi and the others were slightly shocked. Soon after, they all flew to different parts of the Great Formation. After entering the Great Formation, they also disappeared. Husband, this 5-element formation is indeed powerful. Yan Qinglian whispered to Xiangyang after scanning with her divine sense. Xiangyang seemed to be somewhat absent-minded as he said, "This is the great formation that the 5-element sect specializes in. If we ignore it, how would Senior Xiang dare to take it out?" Husband, Yin Qinglian whispered, "What's wrong?" Sigh, Xiang Yang transmitted his voice. Junior brother Xiao, why is there a difference in his constitution? From the looks of it, he clearly has an earth attribute constitution. If Master were to know about it, then what would happen? Sigh, that's true. Yin Qinglian also had a worried look on her face. Junior brother Xiao is kind-hearted and honest. He is the little junior brother in my heart. However, he can't build his foundation and doesn't gain Master's favor. Now, not to mention not building his foundation. Even if he builds his foundation, he may not be able to stand in front of junior brother Chui. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Yin. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1890. Being unable to stand before junior martial brother Chui is still a small matter. Xiang Yang said, "Junior martial brother Xiao isn't favored by Master. If his constitution isn't of the fire attribute, wouldn't he be expelled by Master? And junior martial brother Zhao's divine ability is really powerful. He can kill foundation establishment cultivators before reaching foundation establishment. How powerful will he be after reaching foundation establishment? I don't dare to imagine." You said he and Master. No way. Yin Xinglian was also dumbfounded at this time. She never thought about it. After all, one was Master and the other was disciple. There was nothing to compare. But now that Xiang Yang said it, she immediately woke up. Xiao Hua could kill foundation establishment cultivators before reaching foundation establishment. What if he reached foundation establishment? Wouldn't he be able to kill late foundation establishment cultivators? But what cultivation level? It's only late foundation establishment cultivators, right? He hasn't even reached peak foundation establishment. But Yin Qinglian still firmly shook her head. Junior martial brother isn't that kind of person. Yes, I also think so. Xiang Yang smiled bitterly. But what about Master? Thinking about the helplessness of a strict father, Xiang Yang felt a sense of powerlessness. It wasn't that he didn't want to teach his disciple. It was just that he was too earnest and too strict. If he knew about Xiao Hua's change, who knows what he would do? Expelling him from the Imperial Thunder sect wasn't impossible. Husband, you should think about it again. Yin Qinglian also said powerlessly to Xiang Yang. Xiang Yang felt a headache coming on. He already knew too many of Xiao Hua's secrets, but he didn't know these secrets. He really didn't know whether he should tell Master or not. Glancing at Xue Xue, who only had concern on her face, Xiang Yang sighed. His gaze fell on the 5 elements soul capturing formation that had changed again. At this time, inside the 5 elements soul capturing formation, the figures of Xiao Hua and the others were still nowhere to be seen. However, Zhen Yi and the other golden core cultivators had already appeared. Each of them flew in the air, forming seals with their hands, releasing their divine senses and carefully comprehending the changes in the formation. Their figures were also constantly flying, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Xiao Hua, who was the eye of the earth formation, was sitting cross-legged on the eye of the formation. The earth-type magic treasure was constantly extracting spiritual energy from his body. This spiritual energy was just extracted by Xiao Hua from the valley. It wasn't refined and was directly used by the magic treasure. At this moment, Xiao Hua's heart was even more tangled than Xiang Yang's. Although the mental cultivation method in his body was unceasingly flowing, he was thinking a lot in his heart. The bone refinement of the 7 colors is for escape. The first layer was to use the fire essence flame crystal to temper the body. Of course, it was fire. Only by using the fire essence flame crystal could the body be tempered to perfection. Therefore, the first layer of bone tempering should be fire. After the fire, it should be earth. Presumably, the color of my bones should have changed, and my body's attribute should have changed to earth. Damn it, this young master has never heard of a cultivator who can change their body's attribute. It is precisely because this young master already has an earth attribute physique that the prairie fire mental cultivation technique is somewhat obscure when refining the heaven and earth spiritual energy. This 5 elements sex 5 elements formation also has a problem in controlling the fire attribute spiritual energy. When he thought of this, Xiaohua was immediately overjoyed. Since it's an earth attribute physique, then there's no need for the fire essence flame crystal. I also don't need to search for it in the flame forest swamp. Isn't there an earth crystal Yao milk in the space? It should be used. I just don't know if Sun Shu's method of using it will work. The earth attribute spiritual energy is already insufficient. I'll use my magic power to supply it. Xiaohua suddenly felt that the formation was strange. Without thinking, he poured his magic power into the magic treasure. After the magic treasure received Xiaohua's magic power, it immediately returned to its original state. It unhurriedly absorbed the magic power, emitting a dark brown brilliance. Seeing that Xiaohua's magic power had been depleted by more than 30%, Xiaohua began to turn his eyes, gradually reducing his magic power. After half a cup of tea's time, all of his magic power was isolated. The light of the earth attribute magic treasure above Xiaohua's head disappeared, and it immediately fell to the ground. Immediately, the entire five elements soul capturing formation was broken, and everyone's figures were revealed. Looking at the other cultivators on the other four formation cores, although their complexions were not as pale as Xiaohua's, they were not looking good either. Especially Qing Hao, her forehead was covered in sweat. Clearly, she could not hold on any longer. Good. Xiang Min's figure landed, and she clapped her hands with a smile. I didn't expect the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples' cultivation to be so profound. Although he has not broken through to the Foundation Establishment realm, he is still at the Qi Refinement realm. Unexpectedly, he has persisted for so long. Fellow Taoist Zhen, if nothing unexpected happens, your 2 portions of Lightning Beast's inner core should be fine. Fellow Taoist Yang's words are wrong. That portion of inner core is Xiaohua's. It has nothing to do with this old man. Zhen Yi looked at the pale Xiaohua, who was paralyzed on the ground, and said with satisfaction, Fellow Taoists, take a rest first. When Xiaohua recovers his magic power, we will let him lure the fire ape. Xiang Min said with a smile. Zhen Yi seemed to have thought of something and asked, Fellow Taoist Xiang, according to Xiaohua, he has 2 methods to lure the fire ape. One is to go to the fire ape's vicinity based on his perception, and the other is to stay in place with less certainty. Xiang Min was startled, and she said with a frown, I need time to set up the formation. If Xiaohua goes out to lure the fire ape, how can this formation be formed? It's better to use the second method. Although the certainty is low, it can still lure the fire ape, right? Xiaohua collapsed on the ground and said in a low voice. He was secretly complaining in his heart. Zhen Yi didn't say anything else. He walked in front of Xiaohua and transmitted his voice. What's up with the attribute of your physique? Disciple. Disciple has the hidden fire attribute, and there's also the earth attribute mixed in. Xiaohua scratched his head with difficulty and said, As for the specifics, I'm afraid only the 5 elements sect can explain it clearly. Zhen Yi nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Hurry up and consume the elixir to recover your magic power. Later, we still have to think of a way to lure the fire ape. But Xiaohua was about to say something, but he was forced back by Zhen Yi's sharp gaze. Sigh, I'll just take it one step at a time. Only now did Xiaohua understand the legendary saying of driving a duck to a perch. 100 miles away from Xiaohua, in the rather large underground cave under the fire lake, there were a few cultivators at the corner of the altar who were methodically repairing the formation. The other spirit husbandry sect disciples had already left long ago. However, they didn't go far away. Instead, they sat cross-legged around the altar, each holding a jade slip in their hands. Their brows were slightly furrowed, as if they were comprehending something. The contents of the jade slip were none other than the spirit-devouring cultivation method that the spirit husbandry sect elder Yuan Feng had asked his disciples to distribute. Of course, what the disciples were comprehending was extremely simple. Even so, it was still extremely difficult to comprehend from the expressions of the cultivators. A soft paw sound was heard. It seemed like a stone had fallen to the ground, but it also seemed like a mechanism had closed. Then, on the altar, a foundation establishment disciple who was following behind a few Chi refinement disciples shouted in a low voice, "Stop!" How could those Chi refinement disciples not know that the formation had been completed? Even if this foundation establishment disciple didn't say anything, they would have stopped anyway. However, this foundation establishment disciple cautiously immersed his divine sense into the jade slip again. After looking at it for a moment, he slowly cast a spell that had been brewing for a long time. Wong, a soft sound was heard, and the area below this cultivator shone with a faint brilliance. Then it was extinguished. Following the extinguishment of the brilliance, an even denser brilliance appeared in this area and rapidly spread across the entire altar. It's done. This foundation establishment cultivator's eyes were filled with joy. However, before he could fly out of the altar, rumble, rumble, rumble. After a few loud tremors, the atmosphere on the altar became slightly tense. Not only was there a large amount of dust rising from the altar, even the entire ground was shaking nonstop. This commotion obviously attracted the attention of the spirit husbandry sect disciples who were resting around the altar. All of them flew up in fright. However, just as they leaped into the air, the brilliance on the altar suddenly disappeared. The tremors stopped, and the entire underground space became silent. Yuan Feng, Zhe, Qipeng, Man Yun, and who you were the four spirit husbandry sect elders in the later stage of the Golden Core realm. Naturally, they were also attracted by the commotion and flew above the altar. Greetings to the four elders. The foundation establishment disciple who was the last to repair the spell formation bowed hurriedly. Not bad. Go and rest. Comprehend the mental cultivation method that I imparted to you earlier. Yuan Feng smiled and waved his hand. There will be a great opportunity for you in a few days. Thank you, Elder Yuan. The cultivator's face was filled with gratitude. He brought a few Chi refinement disciples and hurriedly landed at the side of the altar. He took out the jade slip and hurriedly comprehended it. At this moment, Zhe, Qipeng, and the others were no longer bothered by Yuan Feng's arbitrary actions. Instead, they looked at the frightened disciples beside the altar and scolded, "There's not much time left. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear Elder Yuan's reminder? If you can't comprehend the mental cultivation method, you will be the ones at a disadvantage in front of the great opportunity." Yes, the disciples with status bowed and instructed the disciples on the left to descend and comprehend the mental cultivation method. Elder Yuan, look at the spell formation. Compare it to the jade slip in our hands. It should have been repaired. Hu Yu scanned the altar with his divine sense and said in a low voice, "But the incomplete part in the jade slip, we still can't find it. This 5 essences spirit awakening spell formation is also incomplete. It doesn't matter. As far as I know, since the spell formation has already reacted, it should be able to be activated." Yuan Feng smiled. "Moreover, we can't completely crack the spell formation. We only need to open a small gap in the 5 essences spirit awakening spell formation and release some of the Chao Chi's soul for us to use." Fine, Man Yun's eyes flashed fiercely. There's never anything in this world that is completely certain. If we always shrink back, how can we achieve nascent soul? I will listen to Elder Yuan's arrangement. I will also follow Zhe, Qipeng, and who you had already comprehended the spell formation and spirit awakening mental cultivation method. They knew that there were many benefits, so they both gritted their teeth and nodded. Great. Yuan Feng clapped his hands and said, "In that case, let's begin. We will listen to Elder Yuan's orders." The 3 people cupped their hands and said, "Bring the 5 spirits up," Yuan Feng ordered. On the other side of the stone wall of the altar, 5 early-stage gold core cultivators flew down from the 5 different caves. There were 3 men and 2 women, and each of them held a spiritual storage bag in their hands. There were many talismans on the spiritual storage bags. Chapter 1891. The 5 cultivators flew to the 4 elders and bowed. Yuan Feng nodded and said, "Go back to your positions as I said before." "Yes." The 5 of them replied in unison. Then they scattered and flew to 5 different places on the altar. When they landed, they were at the 5 points of the pentagram on the altar. At the 5 points of the pentagram, there were 5 small formations. In the center of each formation, there was a small Chao Wu pattern. "Elders, please return to the cave. I will activate the array here. If there is any problem, I will ask the elders for help." Yuan Feng smiled and said to the other 3, "And we will go back first and watch from the side. Elder Yuan has worked hard. It will take 5 days and 5 nights to activate this array. If there is anything wrong, call us immediately." Man Yun and the others cupped their hands and flew back to the cave. After the 3 of them flew away, Yuan Feng patted his hand and took out a small, triangular flag from the storage bag. The flag was 5-colored, and each of the 5 colors had 5 spirit beasts bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws. It was very ferocious. "Go!" Yuan Feng channeled his spiritual power, and the small flag flew into the air above the altar. Yuan Feng chanted a mysterious chant, and the spell in his hand continued to enter the small flag. The small flag grew bigger and bigger under the infusion of spiritual power. In about the time it took to eat a meal, it became a 10-feet flag. At this time, the 5 spirit beasts on the small flag were also revealed. The first one was a green dragon. Its long body swam slightly on the flag. Its 2 dragon eyes revealed a ferocious light, and its 4 dragon claws also flashed with a sharp light. The second one was a white tiger. It was flying in the air in a pouncing posture. Its bloody mouth made people feel fear at first sight. The third one was a vermilion bird. Its fiery red feathers were like burning flames, and its small body exuded a ferocity not inferior to the white tiger. The fourth one was a black tortoise. Under the pitch-black tortoise shell, a triangular head poked out slightly. Its slightly open mouth was actually a scarlet snake tongue. The fifth one was a chelan, a strange beast with the body of a moose, the tail of an ox, the hooves of a horse, and the skin of a fish stepped on the auspicious cloud. There was a faint yellow light on its forehead. 5 spirit flags. When Man Yin saw the 5 spirit beasts suddenly awaken, he was extremely shocked. Zhe Qiping sighed and said, "Elder Yuan." Sure enough, he already planned this. He even found the legendary 5 spirit flags. You looked at the 5 golden core disciples on the altar and asked curiously, could it be that the 5 disciples are holding the 5 spiritual beasts? Haha, I definitely don't believe that. Zhe Qiping smiled and shook his head. The 5 spirit flags are inanimate objects. Although they've been missing for a long time, it's normal for them to be found. The 5 spirit beasts are demonic beasts, even legendary saint beasts. How could they be something we can covet? I'm afraid these 5 storage bags contain spirit beasts with the bloodlines of the 5 spiritual beasts. Just as they were talking, Yuan Feng scolded, "Where is the Azure Dragon?" This soft voice resounded throughout the entire underground space. The low-level disciples of the Spirit Husbandry sect who didn't know what the Azure Dragon represented all stood up in shock. As disciples of the Spirit Husbandry sect, how could they not know what the Azure Dragon represented? Although the Taiching sect had a python dragon that protected the mountain, it was still a dragon born from python. Its roots were still pythons and not dragons. The Azure Dragon was the king of dragons, a divine dragon among dragons. It was definitely not something an ordinary dragon could compare to. Now that the elder of the Spirit Husbandry sect had actually called out the Azure Dragon, the early-stage golden core cultivator at the corner of the altar also trembled. He clapped his hands and didn't rush to take out his storage bag. Instead, he activated his magic treasure in the air to protect himself. How could these disciples not be tempted? They all widened their eyes and stared at the cultivator. They wanted to see what the legendary Azure Dragon looked like. The early-stage golden core cultivator was ready. He slapped his hand, and the numerous talismans outside his spirit storage bag fell off, turning into specks of light that fell into his hand. Only then did he lightly shake his spirit storage bag, and a small green python flew out from the spirit storage bag. This green python was about the size of a thumb and had a body that was more than a foot long. There was a sarcoma on its head that looked like a crown. Moreover, there was a thin strand of golden thread on the green python's body, which was quite eye-catching. This is the green python king." A disciple cried out in surprise. His voice was very clear in the quiet space. Instantly, the disciple came to his senses. His face and ears turned red, and he lowered his head without saying a word. The few disciples at the side glanced at him. Although there was some contempt in their eyes, they didn't show any disdain when they saw that he was an Chi refinement disciple. After all, green pythons were extremely poisonous. This green python king was definitely not something an Chi refinement disciple could deal with. However, following the disciples' cry of surprise, a trace of disappointment emerged in everyone's hearts. They all thought at the same time, "So, this isn't the Azure Dragon." Yes, although it's not the Azure Dragon, green pythons have the bloodline of dragons. The green python king can be called the king of pythons. Inside the cave, Zhiqiping nodded slightly. "How strange." Huyu frowned and said, "I remember, the green pythons in the Lichia mountain range never had a python king. How? How did a green python king appear out of thin air?" "Hee, Lichia mountain range isn't the only place with a green python king, right?" Man Yun said with a smile. "Elder Yuan has been planning for over 100 years. Who knows where he got a green python king with the bloodline of dragons?" While the three of them were discussing, the viridescent python king was already floating in the air above the altar. Although the viridescent python king seemed to be sleeping, the golden core cultivator didn't dare to be careless. He cast a few sealing spells and fixed the viridescent python king on the small array pattern above the altar. Immediately after, Yuan Feng, who was in midair, slapped his palm on his chest. With a pu sound, a mouthful of blood essence sprayed onto the 5-spirit flag, covering the Azure Dragon. A dragon's roar resounded through the air from the 5-spirit flag. A faint azure light flew out from the flag. Following the direction of Yuan Feng's spell, it flew towards the green python king, curled up on top of the formation. At the same time, the gold core cultivator sitting cross-legged on the left side of the viridescent python king opened his mouth and spat out a tiny black iron needle. That black iron needle was much smaller than Xiaohua's, but looking at the cold brilliance of the tip of the needle, it was actually much sharper. "Go!" Following the golden core cultivator's soft command, the black iron needle pierced into the sarcoma on top of the green python king's head like lightning. With a SI sound, azure blood sprayed out from the black iron needle. This black iron needle was actually hollow. At the same time, the Azure Dragon's shadow flew to the top of the green python king's head and sucked in all the azure blood without leaving a single drop behind. The green python king was in pain, and its entire body twisted rapidly. Several rays of brilliance appeared on its body. It was the brilliance of the restrictive spell that the golden core had absorbed. With a few pa-pa-pa sounds, the binding spell of the golden core cultivator was actually broken. Following which, the green python king quickly turned around and bit towards the golden core cultivator on the left. Chapter 1892. With a soft hiss, the golden core cultivator's protective brilliance blocked the viridescent python king. But immediately after, a wisp of pitch-black venom appeared and burned the brilliance. The brilliance immediately dimmed. It had actually been destroyed by the viridescent python king. The early golden core cultivator panicked. It wasn't that he didn't have any methods to deal with the python king, but he had received Yuan Feng's orders and couldn't use any spells. He could only passively defend. At this moment, the Azure Dragon shadow that had absorbed the Python King's blood had turned into a blood shadow. It was like a real Azure Dragon. It roared again and charged toward the Python King. When the Python King heard the commotion, It was immediately enveloped by the azure dragon shadow's indescribable pressure. Although it was a bit angry, its entire body was trembling as if it was afraid. The azure dragon blood shadow didn't stop at all. It directly rushed to the front of the viridescent Python King and flew towards it. The Python King was clearly staking everything. It bounced up and bit toward the azure dragon shadow. Unfortunately, the blood shadow was only a shadow. The Python King only bit empty air. At this moment, the azure dragon shadow had already rushed into the Python King's body and passed through it. Gigi, the Python King, let out a mournful cry as if its soul had been sucked out. After it cried out, its entire body fell from the sky and stopped moving. Roar, the azure dragon shadow became even more vivid and was about to solidify. Go Yuan Feng stood in the air and was overjoyed. He pointed with his hand, and a ray of light flew out from the 5 spirit flags and landed on the formation under the azure dragon's blood shadow. With a rumbling sound, the small formation began to shake and green light overflowed. The entire small formation gradually began to emit a gentle green light. When the entire formation was completely filled with green light, the Chao Wu pattern on the formation gradually faded until it finally disappeared. A small hole appeared, and it was precisely where the bloody mouth on the Chao Wu pattern was. As the hole appeared, a suction force appeared. The azure dragon shadow circled in the air for a moment before it fell into the hole with a whoosh. As the azure dragon blood shadow entered, the hole also disappeared. Then the entire small magic array protruded from the altar and began to rotate on its own. This rotation lasted for a day and a night, until it finally turned into a sparkling and translucent azure dragon. 5 Skunda's awakening formation. These 5 accumulations, could they be the 5 spirits? Yu looked at the array formation's changes and said somewhat pensively, I'm afraid so. Mannion pointed his finger and said, look at that green dragon. Although it looks crystal clear to the naked eye, it's actually very complicated in spiritual sense. This yin probably means to contain spirit, right? If you really use the azure dragon's bloodline and soul, then this formation would naturally be pure. Yes, it would even be transparent. Zhi said thoughtfully, but if that's the case, I'm afraid even Mayana cultivators can do it, right? That's right, even spirit severing stage and body integration stage cultivators can't do that. Mannion nodded without hesitation, then frowned and said, Elder Yuan has exhausted a lot of energy. Before Mannion could finish, Yu shook his head and said, no need. Elder Yuan is already consuming pills to recover his spiritual power. We're not as proficient in formations as Elder Yuan, and we haven't refined the 5 spirit flags. Let's not disturb him. Fine. Mannion looked at Zhe and Qi Peng with complicated expressions. After Yuan Feng finished resting, he ordered another disciple to activate the formation where the white tiger was. Advance! This was the only thought in every spirit husbandry sect disciple's mind. Compared to the excitement of the spirit husbandry sect disciples, Xiaohua was unusually depressed. What? You want to go outside the formation to lure the fire ape? You're not joking, right? Xiangmin shrieked. I've already told fellow Taoist Shun that as the Earth Formation Core, you can't leave. Otherwise, not only will the 5 elements soul-capturing formation not be activated, but it will also collapse even if it is activated. If you want to use a magic weapon to lure the fire ape, you can only do it in the 5 elements formation. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. But I don't have much confidence in doing it in the formation. If you don't have confidence, you dare to speak nonsense? You dare to ask for the lightning beast core from us? Feng Shuqing was also unusually angry. No one would have thought that the most crucial part of the formation would have an anomaly. Of course, this anomaly was concealed by Zhenyi. Sai, since you can't go out and lure the fire ape, Xiaohua, you can only stay in the formation. Zhenyi sighed and said, not having much confidence is better than not having any confidence, right? It's better than not luring the fire ape over. Xiao Hua was extremely helpless and could only smile apologetically. Then, I can only try my best. Oomph. Xiang Min snorted coldly and flew into the air. Xue Xue knew the reason, but she didn't dare to ask. She held Xiao Hua's hand and said, "Darling Xiao, you have to be careful." "Yes, I know." At this moment, Xiao Hua didn't dare to say that this was Zheng Ye's idea. They were here because of Zheng Ye's protection. Without Zheng Ye, Xiang Min and the others could casually kill them. How could Xiao Hua dare to offend Zheng Ye? Xiang Min once again set up the 5 elements soul capturing formation. When everything was finished, Xiang Min said coldly in the air, "Xiao Hua, let's see what you're capable of." "Yes, I understand." Xiao Hua sat cross-legged on the earth formation core and slowly sent the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the earth-type magic treasure. He answered casually and took out the sun-moon corona. All the cultivators were concerned about Xiao Hua's methods. When the sun-moon corona was taken out, several divine senses swept over it. However, the sun-moon corona had already been refined by Xiao Hua. Several divine senses couldn't see anything. They could only quietly wait for Xiao Hua to make his move. Xiao Hua closed his eyes and used his magic power to activate the sun-moon corona. Subsequently, the sun-moon corona gradually rose into the air. Then, Xiao Hua began to cast spells. One spell after another, the sun-moon corona began to emit a faint red light. After waiting for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the red light began to become dazzling and almost became a scorching sun. Thus, Xiao Hua's perception gradually expanded along with the brilliance of this scorching sun. Naturally, Xiao Hua's perception couldn't see anything else. All he knew was that within the range of his perception, there was no trace of the fire ape. Very quickly, half a day passed. The entire valley was silent. Feng Shuqing couldn't help but ask, "Xiao Hua, what's the situation?" "Fellow Taoist Feng, don't worry," Zheng Yi said confidently. "Flame Forest Swamp is so big. Who knows where the fire ape and the thunder beast are? If Xiao Hua immediately lured the fire ape over, would we still need to give him a thunder beast core?" Feng Shuqing was speechless. He only snorted coldly and said no more. What Zheng Yi said was reasonable, but if he were to extend the time by 6 days, no one would believe it. However, just when Xiang Min and the others couldn't hold it in anymore and were about to change their expressions, a silent aura gradually rose from a place 100 miles away. It became more and more suffocating. But when it rose to a certain extent, it suddenly disappeared again. This is... Zheng Yi and the other Golden Core cultivators all sensed it with extreme sensitivity. They looked in that direction with extreme puzzlement. "Fellow Taoist Zhang, the fire ape hasn't come yet. Can I trouble fellow Taoist to go and take a look?" Xiang Min was in charge of the formation and couldn't leave. She raised her voice and instructed, "And this Zhang will go over now." Zhang Xinguang nodded and leaped into midair. But just as his figure was about to fly, he heard Xiao Hua say loudly, "Seniors, I've lured that fire ape over, and it's already not far from here." Xiang Min was stunned and then laughed loudly. "Ha! The heavens are helping me. Fellow Taoist Zhang, don't go. Stay where you are." Zhang Xinguang didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly landed and entered the 5 elements formation. But the current Xiao Hua didn't have any joy. Instead, he was secretly anxious. What do you think? Xiao Hua really sensed the fire ape's trace through the sun-moon corona. There was no doubt about it. But the fire ape's direction wasn't towards them. Instead, it was towards the place where the aura burst out just now. Although that place was 100 miles away from the valley, the fire ape wouldn't pass by here. What should I do? Xiao Hua's mind raced. Then, he clenched his teeth and used his magic power to raise the sun-moon corona into the sky. As the sun-moon corona rose, Xiao Hua actually used his magic power to attack the restriction inside the sun-moon corona. Chapter 1893. An hour later, the sun-moon corona gradually descended. Its brilliance also weakened as it slowly landed on the ground in front of Xiao Hua. Looking at the mountain range in the distance, a fire ape that was several feet tall appeared. Its body was covered in flames. The fire ape's ferocious gaze was filled with doubt. As it flew, it turned its head left and right, looking into the distance and peeping into the valley. It was hesitant and puzzled. When the fire ape saw Xiang Yang and the other cultivators sitting cross-legged in the valley and the sun-moon corona in the array, it couldn't help but roar in joy. The flames on its body surged, and a merciless pressure rushed over, covering the entire valley. The thunderous sound came from a distance away from the fire ape. The fire ape actually stopped its descending body and obediently stayed in the air, waiting behind it with its hands hanging down. A few miles behind the fire ape, another pitch-black spirit beast that was about 6 meters tall was flying over. Hundreds of miles below the fire lake, on the altar in the space, Elder Yuan had finished resting. He flew into the air again and raised the 5 spirit flags. He chanted, "Vermilion bird." The third disciple patted his storage bag, and a fire crow floated out. Like the previous spirit beast, this fire crow was also unconscious. Shock appeared on the faces of the spirit husbandry sect disciples who were watching. The fire crow was an ordinary spirit beast and was a far cry from the vermilion bird of the 5 spirit beasts. The disciples didn't expect this thing to come out. However, before they could exclaim in shock, the disciples who were watching had already noticed that something was amiss. A faint red line emerged from the fire crow's beak and passed through the fire crow's abdomen. It then appeared from the fire crow's tail and passed through its back. It then landed on the fire crow's forehead and connected with the red line on its beak. Seeing such a strange scene, everyone was enlightened. This fire crow was definitely not an ordinary spirit beast. Sure enough, as Elder Yuan cast his spell, fiery red blood seeped out of the fire crow's forehead. The blood was so hot that one could almost see the flames contained within it. The blood shadow of the vermilion bird was also covered in flames. It was even more vivid than the previous 2 blood shadows. Similarly, after a day and night, when the vermilion bird formation had become a sparkling and translucent piece, Yu exclaimed in shock, "Elder man, the bloodline of this fire crow is actually so pure. The formation in the spiritual sense is much more transparent than the previous 2. Yes, that's right. This fire crow was probably found by Elder Yuan in the Flame Forest Swamp, right?" Man Yin nodded and said, "The vermilion bird is of the fire attribute. Since the Flame Forest Swamp is so hot, there must be a continuation of its bloodline. Furthermore, it is easier to stimulate the vermilion bird's bloodline in the Flame Forest Swamp compared to the other 4 spirits." After that, Elder Yuan rested for a while and instructed the disciples to take out the spirit beast that was said to have the bloodline of the black tortoise. This time, as expected by the disciples of the spirit husbandry sect, a 3-foot-long black tortoise flew out of the storage bag. After another day and night, a black tortoise formation had formed into a crystal. At this moment, the bloodline of the 4 spirits had been injected into the altar of the 5 essences awakening formation. Although the bloodline of the black tortoise was extremely faint and the formation wasn't sparkling and translucent, it was still much brighter than before. Furthermore, it had formed the shape of a black tortoise, which made Elder Yuan break out in cold sweat. Elder Yuan. When Zhiqiping and the others saw that Yuan Feng's complexion wasn't good, they landed once again and said, "Now that the 4 spirits have been refined, let's wait for another day for the last spirit. I'm afraid that Elder Yuan's magic power isn't enough now." Yuan Feng clapped his hands and took out a few spirit pills. He placed them in his mouth and smiled bitterly. "I originally had the same thoughts and plans. However, elders, look at these 5 spirit flags." Man Yin and the others looked up and saw that the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise on the 5 spirit flags were much larger than before. They vaguely took up the entire 5 spirit flags, while the Qilin was squeezed into a corner, as if it was about to fall out of the flags. "Everyone, look at the altar again." Yuan Feng pointed. Man Yun and the others used their divine senses and saw that the four spirits' altars had merged together. There was a gap between the altars and the last stone altar. The gap was where the Chao Chi's bloody mouth was. This mouth vaguely emitted a vicious aura. I'm afraid that time waits for no one. Zhe Qiping nodded slightly. 4 of the 5 spirits have already refined their bloodlines. If the last spirit isn't refined in time, the formation will change. That's right. Yuan Feng nodded and smiled. Elders, please return to the cave. I'll be done soon. Elder Yuan, thank you for your hard work. The 3 knew that the arrow was already knocked on the bow and had to be fired. They could only cup their hands and fly into the cave. Where's the Qilin? Yuan Feng didn't dare to delay. He immediately shouted the moment he saw the 3 of them. The last golden core disciple shook his storage bag. A scarlet spirit beast with a horn on its head that looked like a horse floated above the altar. Unicorn! Unicorn? The spirit husbandry sect disciples exclaimed again. This was a legendary spirit beast. Due to the unicorn's long and slender, conch-like horn that could suppress devils, especially during cultivation, it could disperse otherworldly devils and hard devils. Therefore, every cultivator in Dawnrain continent wanted to obtain a unicorn's horn. Therefore, the few remaining unicorns were all killed, and the unicorns became legendary spirit beasts. No wonder the unicorn's horn can suppress devils. Huyu exclaimed. So this thing has the Qilin's bloodline. This. Zhe Qiping was a little puzzled. I've been thinking about it. The other 4 spirits are easy to explain. Their bloodlines are almost all recorded. The only difference is the intensity of their bloodlines. But this Qilin's spirit, there's no record of it in my spirit husbandry sect. I really don't know where Elder Yuan got the record of this unicorn having the Qilin's bloodline. Yes, since Elder Yuan got the unicorn, you must be confident. A hint of admiration flashed across Man Yun's eyes. Let's wait and see. Huyu said softly. Then the 5 spirit flag glowed. A Qilin phantom flew out and rushed into the blood extracted from the unicorn's body. Wu, the Qilin phantom, trembled slightly, as if it was uncomfortable and wanted to retreat from the blood. Quick! Yuan Feng was shocked. He pointed at the 5 spirits flag, and the flag vibrated, forcefully suppressing the Qilin blood shadow. Then, under Yuan Feng's control, the Qilin blood shadow extracted the soul of the unicorn. However, the Qilin blood shadow had changed shape, and it looked very similar to a unicorn. Chapter 1894. This. Yuan Feng hesitated. It was obvious that the unicorn's bloodline was not the Qilin's bloodline, or perhaps its bloodline was extremely thin. Continue or stop. Yuan Feng did not dare to use the spell that he was forming. The Qilin's blood shadow danced anxiously on the altar, as if it was afraid of the evil aura. Go! Thinking of the price he had to pay, Yuan Feng was unwilling to give up. He pointed his finger and used a spell. The Qilin's blood shadow flew into the mouth of the last spell formation. Wong! The spell formation shook violently, and the stone spell formation seemed to be lifted up. An indescribable aura and evil aura surged from the stone spell formation, rising into the air. This aura was so fierce and so threatening that the disciples who were in the Qi refinement stage were forced to the ground. This is bad. Yuan Feng panicked. He changed the spell in his hand continuously, and his face was suffused with red light. Finally, Yuan Feng slapped his forehead, and a faint big hand appeared from the top of his head, grabbing at the stone spell formation. The big hand landed on the spell formation, and a strong suction force was produced from the big hand. The Qilin's blood shadow that had rushed into the spell formation was actually pulled out by the big hand. Following the appearance of the Qilin's blood shadow, the spell formation immediately landed on the altar, and the soaring aura disappeared. Return! Yuan Feng shouted, and the big hand disappeared. The Qilin's blood shadow also shook, shaking off the unicorn's blood, and flew back into the 5 spirit flags. Elder Yuan, seeing this, how could Man Yun and the rest still stay in the cave? They all flew down. Sai, I am ashamed. Yuan Feng's pale face was filled with shame. I thought that I was infallible, and thought that the rare unicorn had the Qilin's bloodline, but such a big change occurred. I am really ashamed of what the 3 elders and the sect master have entrusted me with. Seeing that the spell formation had a problem at the last step, Man Yun and the rest were filled with regret. However, since Yuan Feng had done so much, how could they not comfort him? Everyone could only say something about how fate had yet to arrive and that it was an ominous record. However, in the end, everyone fell silent. Only Hu Yu spoke of the knot in everyone's hearts. What kind of spiritual beast has the Qilin bloodline? Even Yuan Feng, who had studied the 5 Skandha's awakening formation for over 100 years, didn't know about it. How could others know about it? Everyone looked at each other, not knowing how to guess. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for next time. Man Yun was about to speak when all of a sudden, Yuan Feng's eyes lit up and he said anxiously, I know what spirit beast it is. What spiritual beast? Man Yun and the others were shocked as well, and they asked in unison. Earth-warding beast, Yuan Feng said resolutely. Dust-repelling beast? This isn't very possible, right? It seems to have nothing to do with the Qilin. But you said hesitantly. After all, the dust-warding beast was far from the legendary Qilin. Even if it isn't, it's almost the same. Yuan Feng was very agitated, and he said with some regret, the spell formation Jade Scroll mentioned the dust-warding beast many times, but I didn't think of that at all, really. As he spoke, he slapped his hand and took out a spirit storage bag from his waist. He called out to the disciple who had just released the unicorn and transmitted his voice to him. That disciple nodded vigorously and then flew to the stone wall. I'll rest for a while. Elders, please protect I. Yuan Feng slapped his hand and took out 4 pills of various colors. He put them in his mouth after taking a quick look at them. Then he cupped his hands and said to Man Yun and the rest. Elder Yuan. Zhiqipan was a little hesitant, and he said, the pills that I took just now, haha, it's fine. It's already at the last moment. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll activate this spell formation and let the spiritual beasts of our spirit husbandry sect disciples evolve. Yuan Feng waved his hand and smiled. Then he sat cross-legged in midair. Man Yun and the rest stood by Yuan Feng's side, forming a triangle on guard, afraid that the spell formation would change again. After the time it took to eat a meal, Yuan Feng's pale face gradually regained its redness. When the disciple who took the dust-repelling beast to deal with it returned, Yuan Feng also stood up in midair. How is it? Yuan Feng asked calmly. The golden core disciple said respectfully, it's done according to Elder Yuan's instructions. It's no different from a unicorn from before. Go to the eye of the formation as usual, Yuan Feng instructed. When the golden core disciple left, Hu Yu smiled. Elder Yuan, it's already late. Why don't you rest for another half a day? It's fine, you all can just watch from the sidelines. Yuan Feng shook his head. However, if we succeed this time, the spell formation will be activated. We'll act according to what we discussed earlier. All right. Man Yun and the rest looked at each other, and there was even more joy in their eyes. Yuan Feng flew under the 5 spirit flag again and slowly formed hand seals. When the image of the Qilin moved above the 5 spirit flag, Yuan Feng shouted again, Where's the Qilin? The golden core disciple received the order and slapped his spirit storage bag. A dust-warding beast that had yet to mature flew out. Similarly, a black iron needle pierced the side of the dust-warding beast's horn. The Qilin image that flew over from the 5 spirit flag caught the crimson blood. With a tearing sound, the Qilin's blood image was formed instantly. However, this blood image wasn't as solid as before. Great! While Yuan Feng was delighted, all the spirit husbandry sect disciples below the altar cheered, and some of them forgot themselves. Yuan Feng smiled. After waiting for a while, he swept his gaze across the disciples, and all of them kept their joy. All of you are ready, Yuan Feng said softly. When the spell formation is activated, there will be this spirit essence of the spirit beast flowing out. All of you can absorb it according to the instructions of the Heart Sutra, helping your spirit beasts is the same as helping yourself. Do you understand? We understand. Thank you, Elder Yuan, for fulfilling our wish. The disciples' voices were as loud as the mountains. Go, Yuan Feng changed his hand seal again and pointed his finger. The Qilin's blood image rushed into the spell formation. Rumble, many sounds could be heard. The last piece of the spell formation started to protrude slowly, and then it started to spin at an extremely fast speed. Yuan Feng injected his magic power. He thought that the spell formation would be the same as before, and he would need another day and night to refine it. However, just as his magic power entered the spell formation, a suction force appeared. Yuan Feng's magic power was like an unstoppable flood that was sucked into the spell formation. At this moment, the other four spirit spell formations also started to spin. As they spun, they also spun around the entire altar. Yuan Feng wanted to stop his magic power from being sucked out, but he didn't dare to. He could only clench his teeth and pour out his magic power. The magic power of a golden core late-stage cultivator was injected into the Qilin spell formation. In an instant, the spell formation started to become crystal clear. Furthermore, the moment the spell formation became crystal clear, the other four spell formations also started to change and gradually became transparent. However, the suction force didn't decrease. Instead, it became even stronger. Elders, come and help me. Yuan Feng obviously couldn't hold on any longer and hurriedly asked for help. Man Yun and the rest didn't dare to delay. They all flew over and injected their magic power into Yuan Feng's body, allowing the next spell formation to absorb it. Ugh. The five arrays cried out at the same time, and the five spirits also raised their heads and cried out. An aura soared into the sky, and a huge amount of five elemental spiritual qi also rushed out of the underground fire lake along with the aura. As the five elemental spiritual qi rushed out, the transparent five-spirit spell formation suddenly flashed with a five-colored brilliance. Then, a wisp of black gas appeared from the center of the spell formation. The moment the black gas appeared, it started to spin in a spiral and rushed out of the entire transparent spell formation. The entire spell formation started to turn turbid. In an instant, the five spell formations turned into five spiraling balls of gas. At this moment, the suction force of the spell formation also gradually disappeared. The magic power of the four golden core late-stage elders of spirit husbandry sect was completely sucked away. Yuan Feng and the other three hurriedly consumed pills to recover their dermic powers. Their eyes and spiritual senses covered the entire array again, waiting for the next change. However, at this moment, something strange happened again. A black and white light flashed, and an aura that soared into the sky pressed down. Suddenly, five strange cultivators appeared in the five clouds of qi in the valley on the mountain range. The lightning beast that appeared had a human form. Its body was extremely black and covered with purplish-black scales. Each scale was the size of a palm, and between the scales, there were flashes of lightning. Two wings that were dozens of feet in size swayed in the sky with purplish-black lightning. Looking at its face, it was indigo in color and also covered with dense scales. Its two eyes were like golden bells that were protruding out of its head. Its mouth was a bird's beak that was sharp and protruding out. Its head was a ball of flame that was so bright that it dazzled everyone's eyes. This is the lightning beast? Xiaohua had never seen a lightning beast before, and when he saw it, he couldn't help but be astonished. It was far from what he had imagined. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The lightning beast opened its mouth, and a low rumble of thunder sounded. The fire ape seemed to be able to understand this rumble. It raised its head and roared, pointing at the sun-moon corona on the ground. The lightning beast also swept its spiritual will over, and Xiaohua could almost feel the brutality and cruelty in the spiritual will. As if they were negotiating something, the lightning beast and the fire ape kept making noises and moving their limbs. In the end, the lightning beast spread its wings and actually flew down, while the fire ape stopped in midair. This is bad. Xiaohua was shocked. He was worried for Xiang Yang and the rest who were sitting cross-legged in the spell formation. These Foundation establishment disciples couldn't be outside the spell formation. They could either hide far away or stay in the spell formation as bait. At this moment, the plans of the Golden Core Stage cultivators were all wrong. Of the two beasts, only the lightning beast flew down. The fire ape didn't enter the trap. Obviously, if the lightning beast killed several people and took away the sun-moon corona, everyone's plan to ambush the two beasts would be ruined. At this moment, Xiaohua activated the sun-moon corona again. This object immediately emitted a faint red light, attracting the lightning beast's attention. The fire ape hesitated in midair for a moment, but in the end, it couldn't resist the temptation. The flames on its body flickered, and it flew down. To be continued. Chapter 1895. Rumble. When the lightning beast sensed it and was about to turn around and scold the fire ape, it heard Xiang Min's chuckle in midair. The 5-element plate that was hidden in midair suddenly appeared, and a 5-colored light barrier covered the fire ape and the lightning beast that were tailing it. Roar! The fire ape roared angrily, and the flames on its body suddenly erupted. Its entire body rushed up and grabbed the 5-element plate that was in midair. However, just as the flames flew up to a height of about 10 feet, the 5-element plate in midair suddenly rotated. Then, like the Milky Way pouring down, a stream of water appeared out of thin air and covered the fire ape. Boom! The fire ape opened its bloody mouth, and a scarlet flame rushed up to the sky and stopped the stream of water. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Continuous sizzling sounds were produced at the intersection of the two sides. Fellow Zhang, fellow son, where are you? If you don't make a move now, when will you? Xiang Min chuckled and shouted with great confidence. As Xiang Min's voice fell, Zhang Qingguang and Sun Shankong appeared on both sides of the fire ape. Zhang Qingguang was holding a jade bottle in his hand. It was his favorite magic treasure, the profound wind bottle. Under the activation of his magic power, the profound wind bottle poured out a pool of blue water light, which was directed at the fire ape's upper body. Sun Shankong's magic treasure was the clear water pearl. It flickered with a clear water light, and under the activation of his magic power, it became a foot long and shot toward the fire ape's lower body. Roar! The fire ape was suddenly attacked by two people, and it became even more embarrassed and angry. Its left hand grabbed at the air, and a string of big fireballs immediately appeared. With a slight wave, it rushed toward the water light like a thunderbolt. With a series of rumbling sounds, the water light of the profound wind bottle was scattered in all directions, and it couldn't condense for a while. At the same time, the fire ape's right leg bounced up, and a wall of fire appeared out of nowhere. The raging flames blocked the pure aqua pearl and burned fiercely. Zhang Qingguang and Sun Shankong bitterly smiled in their hearts as they felt the true essence surging within their bodies and their magic power being absorbed by the two magic treasures. They both had a water attribute physique and were invited here by Xiang Min to confront the fire ape. Although the two of them were both at the early Golden Core realm like the fire ape was a natural fire beast, and its ability to control fire was far more tyrannical than a cultivator's. The strength of its fire techniques was also because of the strength of its physique that surpassed those of its peers. In addition, the fire attribute spiritual energy within the flame forest swamp was abundant. Calm down, fellow Taoists. Xiang Min chuckled, and the water light that was rushing towards the fire ape changed again. It actually turned into specks of crystal particles and fell from the sky. As a result, the flame spewed out by the fire ape could no longer be blocked. Most of the crystal particles fell through the gaps of the flames, and the entire area around the fire ape turned into a colorful world. Great! Zhang Qingguang and Sun Shankong felt the abundant water attribute spiritual energy around them and were overjoyed. As they activated the Yunshuan bottle and the pure aqua pearl, They continuously threw out water attribute spells. One after another, water balls crashed into the fire ape's body, and waves of water that looked weak rushed towards the fire ape's flames. Roar! The fire ape danced with joy, and it seemed that it could no longer produce fireballs as freely as before. The flames around its body were also slowly extinguished under the impact of the spells and magic treasures. The fire ape was already at a disadvantage under the pincer attack of the spell formation and spells. Roar! The fire ape's ferocious nature was stimulated under the disadvantage. It pulled its hand, and crimson flames appeared on its sharp claws. It actually tore apart the water light of the pure aqua pearl in an instant. Then it suddenly clenched its fist and smashed the pure aqua pearl. With a bang, the pure aqua pearl was smashed a few feet away. Taking advantage of this gap, the fire ape stood up and extended its fiery claws again, rapidly stabbing towards Sun Shankong's forehead. Sun Shankong didn't dare to meet the fire ape head-on. He flicked his water sleeve, and a misty green brilliance blocked in front of him. But still, like silk being torn apart by the flames, the fire ape directly grabbed Sun Shankong's forehead. On Sun Shankong's forehead, a light blue protective brilliance appeared like the clouds, trying to block the fire ape's claws. However, under the fire ape's tremendous strength, a crack actually appeared on the protective brilliance. Sun Shankong was shocked. He quickly retreated and commanded the pure aqua pearl to rush towards the fire ape again. The fire ape opened its mouth and revealed its white teeth. The strength under its fiery claws was regenerated, and it wanted to crack Sun Shankong's skull open. At this moment, the specks of crystal particles that covered the fire ape's body suddenly turned into foot-sized rocks and smashed towards the fire ape. If it was under normal circumstances, the fire ape would have been able to dodge. But now, seeing Sun Shankong's brain matter in front of it, the fire ape had the will to fight. Its other hand slashed outwards, and a wall of fire appeared in front of it again, protecting its body. Its left hand continued slashing downwards. Bang, bang, bang. The fire ape's body shook continuously. The flames protecting its body were also on the verge of being extinguished by the water light of the profound wind vase. With a tearing sound, Sun Shankong's protective brilliance was actually torn apart by the fire ape. Its sharp claws had already landed on Sun Shankong's forehead. Fellow Daoist Xiang, save me. Sun Shankong was shocked and called for help. As soon as Sun Shankong's voice sounded, his body swayed and suddenly disappeared. The fire ape's claws also missed. Roar! The fire ape was stunned. Just as it was about to roar, Sun Shankong appeared under it. His face was still panicked, but hatred flashed in his eyes. He circulated his magic power desperately, and the pure aqua pearl that had smashed into the fire ape's right calf suddenly shrank by several times. Like a small rock, it fell into the fire ape's protective flames. At this moment, the rock broke through the fire ape's protective flames and smashed into its calf. With a crisp cracking sound, the fire ape's solid calf bone was actually broken. The fire ape staggered and almost fell down. It couldn't help but cry out in grief. Unfortunately, when the fire ape looked around, there was no trace of the thunder beast around it. All it could see was the huge rock and the suffocating water light. At this moment, a wave of speechless dizziness inexplicably appeared in the fire ape's head. A kind of tiredness that it had never felt before also spread out from the fire ape's body and limbs. The five elements' soul capturing formation was indeed powerful. Roar! The fire ape was shocked. Its left and right hands blew hard on its chest. When it raised its head and let out a long howl, a fist-sized crimson inner core was spat out from its mouth. Instantly, heat and violence filled the fire ape's surroundings. The rocks that were smashing towards it, as well as countless waves of water and other objects, all gradually disappeared under the pressure of the inner core. Seeing the fire ape spit out the inner core, Zhang Qingguang and Sun Shankong were not shocked. Instead, they were overjoyed. They knew that this was the fire ape's last resort. Although they had exhausted more than half of their magic power, as long as they could persevere, the fire ape would definitely be killed. Chapter 1896. The only thing they were worried about now was that Li Fengzhu, who was in the center of the water formation, was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. They didn't know how long his magic power could last. Once the 5 elements soul capturing formation collapsed, the fire ape would definitely escape. Within the flame forest swamp, even 7 golden core stage cultivators wouldn't be able to catch up to or kill the fire ape. Attack! Sun Shankong clenched his teeth, and the pure water pearl made a turn in the air and flew toward the fire ape's inner core. Zhang Qingguang did the same. He opened his mouth, and a misty green brilliance fell on the profound wind bottle. The jade bottle suddenly expanded, and the water within the bottle shrank several times. A ray of brilliance as thick as a thumb flew out. It was the essence of the profound water, and it lingered around the fire ape's inner core. Not only was the fire ape in danger and forced to spit out its inner core, the lightning beast was in even more danger. The lightning beast was about to turn around and roar to stop the fire ape from following it. However, before it could roar, the 5-colored light screen had already enveloped it. The thunder beast was enraged. With a flap of the wings under its armpits, its body suddenly shot up and charged towards the 5-colored light curtain. Moreover, the thunder beast raised its 2 pitch-black arms at the same time. Its 5 fingers flashed with purplish-black lightning as they stabbed into the 5-colored light curtain. Rip! The lightning beast actually tore a crack in the 5-colored light screen. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A series of sounds could be heard. Dozens or even hundreds of large fireballs leaked out from the crack and fell like raindrops, smashing towards the lightning beast body. Roar! The lightning beast was shocked. It didn't dare to use force to tear open the crack. It flapped its wings and wanted to escape far away to avoid the fireballs. However, as the lightning beast flew, the fireballs also changed direction and continued to smash towards the lightning beast's head. Seeing that it couldn't dodge, the lightning beast stood in midair and flapped its wings and hands. Streaks of lightning formed a net and flew into the air. With a series of crackling sounds, all the fireballs were extinguished by the lightning net. However, just as the thunder beast was about to flap its wings again and fly into the air, a crimson whip that was dozens of feet long appeared in the air. It circled in the air and actually turned into dozens of small fire circles that covered the thunder beast's head. The thunder beast bared its fangs again and waved its hand. A streak of lightning appeared out of thin air. Then, with a flick of its claw, the streak of lightning turned into dozens of tiny lightning bolts and flew into the dozens of tiny fire rings. After a series of thunderous rumbles, the fire rings were all destroyed, leaving only the whip still suspended in the air. How strange! A low voice sounded. The short Lu Mingsheng appeared near the long whip and sighed. You are indeed a beast born with the ability to control thunder. I can't wait. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed his magic treasure, the sun-chasing whip. With a shake of his magic power, a spark appeared in his hand and flew along the sun-chasing whip to the tip. Everywhere it passed, it grew larger. When the sun-chasing whip streaked across the air like a dragon and hit the lightning beast's chest, the spark was as bright as a round sun. Gee, the thunder beast seemed to have a ferocious nature. It didn't know how to dodge at all. Thrusting its 2 hands forward, it actually struck the fireball with lightning speed. A bit of purplish black appeared within the fireball, and then it suddenly exploded. Ouch! A scream sounded. Looking at Lu Mingxing again, his body was actually flickering with a layer of lightning. He fell from the sky, and the sun-chasing whip was in the lightning beast's hand with lightning lingering around it. Take this! The lightning beast flapped its wings and wanted to chase after Lu Mingxing again. However, with a roar, Zhen Yi, Jiang Zhucheng, Feng Shuqing, and their disciples appeared beside it. It is indeed a rank 6 spiritual beast. Even in the five elements formation, it is still so powerful. Feng Shuqing's eyes flashed. He said fiercely, "If it wasn't for fellow cultivator Xiang, I wouldn't have dared to face this beast. Let's attack together." Zhen Yi clapped his hands, and a pitch-black ring flew into the air without the slightest flicker of light. Rumble, another loud rumble rang out, and the giant green tree rolled toward the thunder beast from all directions with an earth-shattering momentum. Roar! The lightning beast didn't seem to be afraid. With a wave of its hand, more lightning blocked the giant green wood. "Go!" Zhen Yi pointed with his finger. The ring flew into the giant green wood. The giant green wood blocked the ring, and the lightning beast didn't notice it. Zilala! The lightning blocked the green wood and easily destroyed them one by one. However, when the ring suddenly appeared in the middle of the green wood, all of the lightning actually rushed into it like birds returning to their nest. This was the corroding lightning ring that Zhen Yi had been searching for over 100 years. The lightning eclipse ring appeared at the perfect time. It instantly absorbed all the lightning from the lightning beast. The green wood caught the lightning beast off guard and smashed down. It unexpectedly drowned the lightning beast. Roar! The lightning beast roared angrily. Its entire body spun rapidly within the green wood. Its body was emitting lightning, and it looked like a lightning ball about 20 feet wide. Many green trees were once again crushed by the flickering lightning from the lightning ball and were gradually annihilated. At this moment, the lightning erosion ring could only absorb the scattered lightning from the lightning ball. It could no longer absorb the lightning from the entire lightning ball. Zhen Yi's face was filled with astonishment. He had a thunder attribute physique and understood thunder magic the most. This thunder corroding ring was something he had specially used to deal with the thunder beast. But he hadn't expected that the thunder beast would be able to break the thunder corroding ring with a simple spell. Attack! Jiang Zhuqing saw that Zhen Yi's efforts were futile, so he tossed away the transcendent artifact, Wooden Dragon. A staff-like transcendent artifact flew into the air and transformed into a long green dragon. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it charged towards the thunder beast. Go! Feng Shuqing wasn't slow either. With a wave of her hand, she took out a jade pipa from her storage bag. She waved her hand. Although there was no sound, the sound of the pipa was already attacking the lightning beast. Jiaming, Qian Han, and Feng Jiu also took out their magic items and attacked the lightning beast with all their mana. In an instant, light flashed everywhere, and the spiritual energy in the air was completely disrupted. Shi Yin had already flown to Lu Mingsheng's side and caught Lu Mingsheng, who had been knocked out by the thunder beast. He waited for Lu Mingsheng to wake up before he took out his own magic tool and guarded his master's left side very cautiously. In his other hand, he held a shiny talisman. The greenwood dragon charged into the lightning ball. Its 1-foot-long tail smashed into the lightning ball. With a rumbling sound, the lightning ball was scattered. Looking inside the lightning ball, the lightning beast seemed to have fainted and was in pain. It held its head with both hands and staggered. This beast is injured. Jiang Zhucheng didn't expect his wood dragon to be effective. He was overjoyed and shouted, "That's what I said. So many of our fellow Taoists died when we attacked it last time. How can it be fine?" Zhen Yi and the other gold core cultivators charged into the ball of lightning within a few years. As expected, they saw blood seeping out from the corner of the lightning beast's mouth. The purple lightning in the gaps between the scales on its back dimmed, and some pitch-black liquid had seeped into its back. Rumble! The lightning beast suddenly spread its wings and soared into the sky. Its forelimbs spread out, and a series of thunderous roars came from its mouth. PFFF, the others were fine, but Feng Shuqing spat out a mouthful of blood. His body went limp to the side. The jade peepa's sound was broken by the lightning beast, but Feng Shuqing was already suffering from the backlash of the sound attack. Feng Shuqing was already so heavily injured, but the lightning beast was not much better off after forcefully breaking through the invisible peepa. Azure blood gushed from its mouth as its wings trembled violently. Go! Zhen Yi and Jiang Zhucheng looked at each other. The lightning-corroding hoop flew into the air. The wood dragon entered the hoop and rushed toward the lightning beast with it. Sizzle. The lightning beast waved its hand with some difficulty. Lightning flickered in an attempt to block the wooden dragon. However, the moment the lightning touched the lightning-corroding ring, it was sucked in. The wooden dragon charged directly to the lightning beast's chest. Just as everyone's faces lit up with joy, they heard a clear whoosh. A fist-sized purple lightning beast's inner core was spat out from the lightning beast's mouth. The purple lightning beast's inner core was faintly moving, and countless tiny lightning bolts flashed within. Bang! The inner core smashed into the wood dragon and the lightning-corroding hoop. A fist-sized hole appeared on the wood dragon's body. The lightning-corroding hoop also burst. Finally, with a crack, the lightning beast's inner core actually cracked. Ah! Zhen Yi and Jiang Zhuqing screamed at the same time. They both covered their hearts with their hands. Clearly, they were both injured, with two early golden core cultivators injured. The lightning beast, who was already injured, naturally couldn't avoid it. The lightning beast opened its mouth and tried to suck back the inner core. But at that moment, a cultivator flew out from the side of the lightning beast. This cultivator's upper body had already turned into a beast. He looked like a bull, and his thick body made his Taoist robe bulge. This cultivator was Shi Yan, who used the talisman. Shi Yan's eyes were crimson red. His arm, which had swelled to twice its previous size, was wrapped around a thick blue chain. As Shi Yan approached, the chain was activated by Shi Yan's mana. Like a spirit snake, it streaked through the air and struck the thunder beast's back. There was already a lot of blood gushing out from the spot where the thunder beast was. Ha! Shi Yan's chain actually hit the lightning beast's back. The huge impact was obviously beyond the lightning beast's expectations. The lightning beast, who was in the middle of sucking back the inner core, staggered, and its inner core was slightly off course. However, the impact of the chain only managed to break the lightning beast's protective light, revealing its true scales. A few drops of green blood actually dripped down. Roar! The lightning beast was furious. Its wings trembled slightly, and its entire body crouched down. It quickly grabbed the chain with one hand. A string of lightning followed the chain and struck at Shi Yan, while its other hand quickly burned Shi Yan's chest. It easily tore apart Shi Yan's defense. Shi Yan was shocked. He gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and punched the lightning beast's chest. Chapter 1897. Pung! At the same time, Sala moved. When Shi Yan's fist struck the thunder beast, his own chest was also torn apart by the thunder beast's sharp claws. Bloody innards immediately fell from the sky. Shi Yan's corpse also rapidly shrunk and fell. Zhen Yi and the others were shocked. In the blink of an eye, a Middle Foundation establishment cultivator was so easily killed by the thunder beast. The thunder beast let out a sorrowful cry. It held the place where Shi Yan had risked his life to strike with one hand. It seemed to be in great pain. Rumble! At this moment, between the thunder beast and its inner core, many stones appeared and smashed towards the thunder beast. A trace of confusion actually appeared in the thunder beast's ferocious eyes. It seemed that the five elements soul capturing formation had taken effect again. Good. Let's hurry up and do it. Zhen Yu was overjoyed when he saw the situation. He hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Xiang, separate the thunder beast's inner core from the thunder beast." Just as Zhen Yi said, Xiang Min was overjoyed when she saw that the two beasts were about to be trapped. She tried her best to urge the five elements soul capturing formation and was about to increase its power again. She wanted to make a final strike before Xiao Hua, and Li Fengzhu's magic power was exhausted. But at this moment, a strange change occurred. The place where the unknown pressure had been produced once again produced a fierce aura that rushed straight to the sky. Around this aura, a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were produced. This spiritual qi was full of blood and strangeness. As soon as it appeared, it immediately produced a huge suction force. It sucked in all the heaven and earth spiritual qi within 100 miles. Wong Wong, the five elements soul capturing formation, actually let out a sorrowful cry. Not good. Xiang Min was shocked. Just as she was about to pour her magic power into the five elements plate, the five elements plate suddenly exploded and split into 5 pieces that entered the 5 formation eyes. Following the 5 elements plate's entry, the 5 formation eyes were immediately filled with a huge amount of 5 elements spiritual qi. Xiaohua and the others who were sitting in the formation eyes immediately began to spin. Before the 5 of them could do anything, a kind of oppressive force descended from the sky. A black and white brilliance faintly flashed. The 5 people's 5 elements plate and the 5 magic treasures all disappeared. Xiang Min and the rest were dumbfounded. Seeing the 5 elemental soul capturing array collapse without any reason, they were really caught off guard. The fire ape and the lightning beast, who were besieged by the 7 people, suddenly rushed into the air. Each of them executed their natural superpowers and fled in the direction they came from. Where do you think you're going? How could Xiang Min, Zhen Yi, and the others allow the 2 beasts to escape? With a shout, the 7 of them split into 2 groups and followed the flame and lightning beasts up the mountain range. Xiaohua, Shui said sorrowfully as she stared blankly at the empty space. Shiyan's corpse was on the ground, but not a single hair of the 5 people in the eye of the formation could be seen. The sun-moon corona that Xiaohua had just used was also thrown to the side. Xiaohua actually didn't have time to put it into the space. Go, let's catch up to Marshal Uncle Zhen. Only he can help us find Xiaohua. Seeing that the other disciples were all following their own masters, Xiang Yang didn't dare to hesitate and urged Yin Qinglian. Yin Qinglian also didn't dare to delay and pulled Shui. Shui had no choice but to take the sun-moon corona and follow Zhenyi. 100 miles away, in the underground space of the fire lake, Yuan Feng and the other 4 elders, as well as many disciples of the spirit husbandry sect, were dumbfounded as they looked at the 5 rotating masses of black gas and the 5 cultivators who suddenly appeared within the masses of black gas. Who else could these 5 cultivators be? Naturally, they were the 5 formation eyes of the 5 elemental soul capturing array: Xiaohua, Li Fengzhu, Qing Hao, Zhu Ming, and Li Mian. The 5 elemental soul capturing array extracted the spiritual energy of the 5 elements nearby for its own use, and the 5 essences spirit awakening array took up even more of the spiritual energy of the 5 elements. With the power of the 5 spirits and the 4 late golden core realm cultivators, wouldn't the formation eyes of the 5 elemental soul capturing array be used by the 5 essences spirit awakening array? Xiaohua and the others were teleported into the 5 spirit formation eyes of the 5 essences spirit awakening array. How could the 4 early foundation establishment realm cultivators resist such a short teleportation? When their figures appeared in the black gas, they were already unconscious. Only Xiaohua, who was a qi refinement realm cultivator, had a strong physical body. He only felt his vision darken and fainted slightly. His vision became even darker. That's right, it was like that. The figures of Xiaohua and the others only appeared for a moment in the black gas. Yuan Feng and the others didn't even have time to see them clearly before the soaring aura and the spiritual energy of the 5 elements pressed down, completely messing up the 5 masses of black gas. Xiaohua and the others' figures were covered by the black gas, and the 5 masses of black gas fell onto the altar and merged together. The entire altar was boiling with black gas at this moment. Bubbles of various sizes continuously bubbled out, and a blurry pattern gradually formed by the black gas became clearer and clearer. Disciples, get ready. Yuan Feng was overjoyed. He didn't care about the abnormality of Xiaohua and the others and waved his hand as he shouted. At this moment, a bark-like sound rang out from the black gas. A sharp aura was born from the black gas. That aura was very cold and cruel. Seeing that the Chao Wu's soul essence was about to appear, Yuan Feng shouted, "Collect!" The spirit husbandry sect disciples who were already prepared opened their spirit storage bags. All kinds of strange spirit beasts flew out from their spirit storage bags. However, no matter how many spirit beasts there were, they were all suppressed by the aura. Although they didn't piss their pants in terror, they all hid behind the disciples obediently. The spirit husbandry sect disciples all activated their spirit-devouring cultivation method and waited for the Chao Wu's soul essence to appear. However, time passed. Very quickly, the soul essence that they were waiting for still didn't appear. Just as Yuan Feng and the other elders were as anxious as ants on a hot pan, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to gather on the altar in the air. On the other hand, Xiaohua was extremely bewildered. He felt his vision go black, and when he opened his eyes again, Zhen Yi and the others were gone. The lightning beast was gone, and even the earth element magic treasure that was before him earlier had vanished. Naturally, the force that absorbed his magic energy had vanished as well. However, his vision was still dark. He couldn't see anything. What's going on? Xiaohua's body floated in the black gas. He scanned with his divine sense and tried to think of a solution. Unfortunately, the black gas seemed to be very large. Perhaps it was suppressing his divine sense. Xiaohua couldn't see anything. Just as Xiaohua clapped his hands and wanted to use the cloud-suppressing seal, an almost irresistible pressure fell from the top of Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua couldn't react in time and was pushed down. This is bad. Xiaohua didn't hesitate and immediately used the bright thunder escape. He wanted to fly up. At this moment, a barking sound was heard. Xiaohua's body tightened, and his magic power was instantly condensed. Chapter 1898. Xiaohua was caught off guard, and his entire body fell down. He was greatly shocked. What was the difference between this situation and the previous encounter with Xiang Min? Xiaohua did not hesitate. His body shook, and the phoenix celestial body immediately came out of his body. The cry of a phoenix sounded and protected Xiaohua. Immediately after, Xiaohua urged his magic power. The flame of the fire essence flame crystal quickly circulated in his meridians and forcefully poured his magic power into his body. Only then did he barely stop his body in the air. Boom! Xiaohua was like a lit match. His entire body was surrounded by flames, and with the brightness of the flames, Xiaohua could clearly see the situation around him. "Io!" Xiaohua almost cried out in surprise. He was able to see clearly. It would have been better if he hadn't seen clearly. The pitch-black black gas had submerged Xiaohua's surroundings, and he couldn't see the end of it. Moreover, within the black gas, he could faintly see countless faces. Some were humanoid, some were beast-like, and some were even bird-like, and so on. Damn it, it must be Xiang Min's doing. Xiaohua did not need to think at all, and immediately cursed. That guy saw that the fire ape and lightning beast were about to be killed, so he had the heart to take everything for himself. I don't know what he did with the 5 elements soul-capturing formation. These vengeful spirits must have been captured by that guy before. Although Grandmaster Zhen was prepared, he was on the other side of the valley after all. It was impossible for him to do anything in the formation. Xiang Min took the initiative to activate the formation, and those gold core cultivators were unlucky. Ouch! Eldest senior brother, eldest senior sister, and Shui. I'm afraid they are also doomed. Xiaohua immediately became anxious when he thought of Shui. He released his divine sense again, wanting to find traces of Shui. However, he immediately thought of the pressure and the faint feeling of teleportation just now, and knew that Shui might not be here. At this moment, a black fog rolled in front of Xiaohua, and the unconscious figures of Zhu Ming and the others appeared. Senior Zhu, overjoyed, he was just about to call out when he saw the rolling black fog condense in front of him as if it had a life of its own. In the blink of an eye, a dog's face that was 10 feet in size appeared in front of Xiaohua. Ah Chow! Looking at such a huge dog face, Xiao Hua turned pale with fright. In his mind, he involuntarily thought of the name of a kind of fierce beast and cried out in alarm. Moreover, the phoenix celestial body flying above Xiao Hua's head suddenly flapped its wings and smashed that fierce dog face into pieces. However, something strange happened very quickly. The phoenix Dharma body only shattered the black gas. After a short while, the black gas condensed again, and a ferocious face appeared again. Xiao Hua understood and slapped his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal flew out from the space and firmly protected him. He calmly looked at Chao Cheng. When Chao Cheng's face appeared, although its fierce eyes were condensed from black fog, they also emitted a cruel and ominous light. It swept across Xiao Hua's phoenix celestial body, seeming to be somewhat puzzled and also somewhat fearful. Then, it landed on the bodies of Zhu Ming and the others. Woof! With another roar, the souls of Zhu Ming and the other three immediately flew out and entered the Chao Yu's mouth. Immediately after, a cold wind blew past, and the clothes of Zhu Ming and the others quickly decayed. Their exposed bodies also gradually turned black and decayed in the cold wind. In the end, only a few sets of white bones were left. Even the white bones gradually became rusty and slowly turned gray until they finally turned into ashes. Ah, Xiao Hua's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. What kind of method was this? The four of them were all Foundation establishment cultivators. Just like that, they were unknowingly taken by someone by Chao Li while they were unconscious. Moreover, their corporeal bodies had undergone such a shocking mutation. However, Xiao Hua immediately understood that this was not some great divine ability, but a kind of deadly poison of Chao Cheng, a poison that was almost incurable. Thinking of the deadly poison, Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He looked around again. Of course, since the cold wind had deadly poison, how could the black fog around him not have it? Fortunately, the flames of the fire essence flame crystal were so pure that the fierce flames actually forced the black fog out. With a jie sound, Xiao Hua did not dare to let Chao Cheng attack him first. He activated his phoenix celestial body and spread its wings. Two sharp claws flashed with cold light and grabbed at the black fog-formed Chao Cheng. The wind naturally blew towards the phoenix celestial body. Unfortunately, the phoenix celestial body was not a real body. When the cold wind blew past, it did not cause any harm to the phoenix celestial body. Of course, the black fog of Chao Cheng was once again defeated by the phoenix celestial body and turned back into black fog. Whoosh whoosh. The phoenix celestial body flapped its wings again, stirring up the surrounding black smoke. Even though the Chaoyi couldn't take shape, the space where the black smoke was located was immeasurably large, and it didn't seem to have any special effect. Let's go. Xiao Hua saw that the phoenix celestial body was ineffective. The magic power in his body flowed, and he used the lightning escape technique and flew upwards. With a pung, Xiao Hua only flew for about 10 feet when a restriction appeared above his head, blocking his body. Xiao Hua hurriedly released his divine sense. Just as he wanted to see what this restriction was, he heard a bone-chilling, mournful sound from the darkness all around him. That's right, it was a kind of mournful wail. Following the light, Xiao Hua was shocked to discover that the various faces that were silent just now had turned into the shape of malicious spirits. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced at him. Moreover, all kinds of bewitching sounds were continuously produced from the black fog, rushing towards Xiao Hua like waves beating the shore. Goldie! This was Xiao Hua's first reaction, but then he smiled bitterly. Ever since Goldie swallowed Yikuan, it had been in a deep sleep and had not woken up at all. At this time, it was impossible for it to save him. What should I do now? Xiao Hua was somewhat anxious. He saw that countless souls were crowding towards him, as if they were going to annihilate him. Hong Long Long. Xiao Hua threw out several dozen fireball talismans without hesitation. A series of explosions were also effective. The black fog that had just approached him was blown away, becoming dim. However, when the fireballs were all annihilated, the black fog gathered again. Xiao Hua opened the delusion breaker Dharma eye on his left hand and saw that his entire body, front, back, left, and right were all illusory figures. They were either humans or beasts. They were the souls of the creatures that Xiao Ti had swallowed. Buddha's Saraira. Xiao Hua immediately thought of the first ability of the Buddha's Saraira, transcendence. However, when he used transcendence last time, his mind was inside the demonic long banner. Now that his physical body was outside, he did not know if it would work. Moreover, Xiao Hua was somewhat regretful at this time. If he had refined the demonic long banner earlier, he might have been able to succeed at this time. Forget it. At this time, Xiao Hua did not have time to think too much. Seeing that many vengeful souls were crowding towards him again, he threw out another fireball talisman and used the exquisite leaf scripture. Lin, when the Buddha's Sarura in Xiao Hua's mud pill palace shone with golden light, he immediately chanted an incantation. The hidden swastika character on his forehead gradually appeared, and then it quickly spun. After that, it projected an extremely small golden light in front of Xiao Hua's head. That golden light gradually expanded along with the circulation of Xiao Hua's Buddhist mantra. A Buddha's Saraira with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground gradually formed. This Buddha's Saraira continued to grow. Only when it grew to over a foot tall did it stop. The 1 foot tall Buddha's Saraira flickered with golden light, illuminating the nearby black fog. However, contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, although the black fog was illuminated, the countless vengeful souls did not seem to be afraid of the golden light and Saraira at all. Instead, they were like flies that had seen blood, risking their lives to pounce over. Looking at the expressions of those vengeful souls, it seemed they even carried great joy. Damn it, don't tell me. I'm a sheep that entered a pack of wolves. Xiao Hua was somewhat dumbfounded, but he did not dare to be negligent. The Buddha's Saraira formed an incantation, and from his mouth, he chanted the Lin word. Once the incantation came out, it immediately transformed into a golden light that covered one of the vengeful souls. Seeing the golden light descending, that vengeful soul did not know how to dodge and viciously welcomed it. However, when the golden light landed on the vengeful soul's body and passed through it, the vengeful soul's ferocious expression immediately disappeared. The entire vengeful soul also became transparent. The vengeful soul seemed to have woken up, and a pious expression appeared on its face. It bowed towards the Buddha's Saraira and said, "Many thanks to the Venerable One," following which the vengeful soul gradually shrunk and turned into a speck of dust, disappearing to an unknown location. Great! Xiao Hua had already seen this kind of situation inside the Devil Artifact Long Banner. He knew that the Buddha's Saraira was successful, and he could not help but smile. Following which, he quickly circulated the exquisite leaf scripture and chanted the Lin word after Lin word. Every time he chanted a vengeful soul, no matter if it was a cultivator, a mortal, or a bird or beast, none of them were unhappy. They all bowed and disappeared. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Hua himself did not know how many vengeful souls he had transcended, but compared to the seemingly endless amount of vengeful souls, it seemed like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. This transcendence was actually a journey without end. If it was simply like this, Xiao Hua would not be alarmed. What made Xiao Hua somewhat worried was that his Buddha's Saraira seemed to be a delicacy that all vengeful souls yearned for. Just when he was transcending the vengeful souls, numerous vengeful souls also threw themselves into the golden light of the Saraira, wanting to devour the Buddha's Saraira. Admittedly, all of the vengeful souls that bit down on the golden body of the Buddha's Saraira, as if they were struck by the Lin word, abruptly awakened and disappeared. However, they were unable to withstand the biting of these vengeful souls. It was originally not a complete Buddha's Saraira, and now it was incomplete. Although Xiao Hua disregarded everything and circulated his Heart Sutra, wanted to make up for these incomplete parts, his speed was far from comparable to the biting. Xiao Hua could predict that 2 hours for hours might not be a problem, but what about 6 hours? What about a day later? This Buddha's Saraira would be devoured in the end, devoured by those mindless and unconscious vengeful souls. The Buddha sect's sacrificing body to feed the eagle. I'm afraid this is the outcome, right? Xiao Hua inexplicably thought of an inexplicable story in his heart. And at this moment, a similar restrictive force as before was born again, enveloping toward Xiao Hua. Evidently, it did not want to allow Xiao Hua to circulate his Buddha sect's Heart Sutra calmly. Chapter 1899. Xiao Hua felt the power of imprisonment and hurriedly split his attention. On one hand, he maintained his Buddhist mantra, and on the other, he urged his phoenix body to block in front of the power of imprisonment, trying his best to stop this spell. Xiao Hua's cultivation was still limited, and his phoenix body had not evolved enough. He could resist this power of imprisonment, but it was clear that the power of imprisonment was shrinking bit by bit, and the space that Xiao Hua could resist was shrinking. What should I do? Xiao Hua's forehead was covered in sweat. He saw the vengeful spirits surrounding him, and the power of imprisonment appeared again, but he still had not seen Xiao Cheng's true body. Withdraw. Xiao Hua's cloud-suppressing seal was already out, but it couldn't stop the vengeful souls, nor could it resist the power of imprisonment. He might as well withdraw it. Then he opened his mouth, and the dream executioner flying sword flew out. It split into two, and then split again. 8 sword lights flew into the black chi. He used sword plays the world, and recklessly stabbed out without regard for anything. A series of heart-wrenching screams came out. Out of Xiao Hua's expectations, the power of karma on the dream executioner flying sword could actually stab the vengeful spirits. Great! Xiao Hua was overjoyed, but just as his joyful mood rose, he felt that something was wrong, and his heart was moved. These vengeful spirits were originally pitiful. If they could be reincarnated by the Buddha Saraira, they could probably be reincarnated, but to be assassinated by the dream executioner. Their souls should be scattered. With this thought in mind, the dream executioner flying sword immediately slowed down a lot. But Xiao Cheng did not give Xiao Hua a chance at all. The vengeful spirits that filled the sky sped up their biting, and the power of imprisonment became even stronger. Sigh. Forget it, Xiao Hua sighed. This young master can't even protect himself. How can I care so much? I don't know when these vengeful spirits died in the hands of Xiao Cheng, but today they could be considered to have transcended. Therefore, the dream executioner flying sword did not show any mercy, and killed in a crisscross pattern in the air, incomparably fierce. Woof! A dog's bark that had not sounded in a long time suddenly came out from the black chi, and it seemed to carry pain and shock. Here, Xiao Hua did not hesitate, and urged the dream executioner flying sword to stab towards the dog's bark from all directions. Unfortunately, it was merely a miserable cry, and there was no further movement. Moreover, Xiao Hua's divine sense didn't seem to have discovered anything. Clearly, the cry that Xiao Hua heard just now was not sleep-talking. At the very least, the strength of the confinement was 30% stronger, indicating Xiao Cheng's anger. Boom! Xiao Hua once again sped up the circulation of the prairie fire mantra in his body, forcing the flames of the fire marrow flame crystal out of his body. He did his best to resist this confinement force that he had never encountered before. At the same time, Xiao Hua had no choice but to multitask. Not only did he have to circulate the Buddhist mantra to repair the Buddha Saraira, he also had to continue urging the sword playing the world to search for Chao Ti within the black gas. At this time, Xiao Hua was already exhausted. He was unable to think why Xiao Cheng, who was so strong, did not fight him head-on. Instead, he repeatedly avoided her. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. Xiao Hua's situation was precarious, and he had already reached the final edge. Not to mention that there were not many Buddha Sarara left. The swarm of vengeful spirits did not decrease at all. Even Xiao Hua's Phoenix Dharma body was somewhat exhausted, gradually unable to resist the confinement force that had not weakened in the slightest. Xiao Hua's face was ashen. He really did not understand where Xiang Min had brought him to. He simply had a feeling of dying with everlasting regret. Perhaps if I quickly force Chao Cheng out, the situation will improve. Xiao Hua was somewhat whimsical. He did his best to urge the Dream Executioner Flying Sword to fly for 2 hours in vain, killing many vengeful spirits, but not even catching a single strand of Chao Cheng's hair. However, at this time, a strange change occurred. The fire marrow flame crystal that had long since dimmed suddenly extinguished. Xiao Hua's spiritual power immediately lost its support. Not only could he not use his flying technique, even his figure fell towards the black chi. Oh no! Xiao Hua hastily used the ethereal steps levitation technique and tried his best to stabilize his body in the air. Just as a strand of scattered grief was born in his heart, an indescribable pressure emerged from Xiao Hua's body and instantly enveloped the entire darkness. Moreover, this pressure continued to rush out of the restriction and envelop the area within a radius of dozens of miles. Instantly, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within dozens of miles became completely chaotic. The originally tyrannical fire attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth became even more wanton, crashing in all directions, rushing towards the sacrificial altar under the fire lake. Moreover, in the fire lake above the sacrificial altar, the originally boiling magma was like frozen ice water, emitting crunch, crunch, crunch sounds, gradually becoming colder. The fire mice, fire bats, and other spiritual beasts simply could not escape and were all sealed within. As the magma in the fire lake condensed into grayish-white lava, the fire attribute spiritual energy within completely condensed into fist-sized scarlet-red crystals, floating in mid-air. Looking at the surrounding dozens of miles, these scarlet-red crystals could be seen everywhere, sparkling and translucent to a terrifying degree. Foundation establishment. Xiao Hua immediately understood, and with a groan in his heart, a kind of incomparable happiness filled his entire body. A kind of feeling of surviving a disaster spontaneously arose in his heart. Immediately after, Xiao Hua slightly looked inside his body and saw that the fire marrow flame crystal within his meridians were completely gone, and there was not much true energy left in his meridians. At this time, this true energy was violently boiling, comparable to boiling water, and had already begun to liquefy a little. It was precisely because of the liquefaction of his true energy that Xiao Hua's body produced a suction force, and as the pressure around Xiao Hua's body increased, the suction force on his body also became stronger and stronger. Great! Xiao Hua waved his hand, and without hesitation, took out 9 foundation establishment pills from the space, and swallowed them all at once. The foundation establishment pills immediately turned into liquid and entered his body. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent, and immediately dissolved this pill according to the condensing experience that Jin Qing had left for him. Foundation establishment pills were indeed foundation establishment pills. An abundant medicinal power rushed into his meridians, and not only did it replenish his true energy, it also accelerated the liquefaction of the true energy in his meridians. The suction force around Xiao Hua's body gradually increased. Previously, there were still restrictions in the surroundings that prevented the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from entering, but in the end, it could no longer be stopped. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged into Xiao Hua's body like a tidal wave, and the many fist-sized scarlet-red crystals also poured into his meridians. 9 foundation establishment pills are indeed not enough. Xiao Hua felt the liquefaction of his true energy slowing down, and he hurriedly waved his hand again, and 9 foundation establishment pills entered his mouth again. Not to mention Xiao Hua's sudden foundation establishment in the space under the sacrificial altar. All the disciples of Spirit Husbandry sect who were guarding outside the sacrificial altar were stunned. After the 5 balls of black gas suddenly appeared on the sacrificial altar, there was no more movement. Only the spiritual energy of heaven and earth continued to pour in, and Chao Chen's soul essence did not appear for a long time. Although many disciples were waiting for the soul essence to appear, how could they not be lazy after 2 hours? Yet, just as they were being lazy, and when Yuan Feng and the others were bewildered, the vision of Xiao Hua's foundation establishment appeared. Chapter 1900. Io, why is someone condensing a core? Hu couldn't help but exclaim in shock, but she immediately shook her head. But this pressure is different from a golden core. It seems far from enough. Moreover, the divine sense isn't a golden core divine sense. Only the condensation of the world's spiritual energy is somewhat similar to an initial golden core. Man Yin was also a golden core cultivator, so she naturally knew the difference. Elder Yuan, this is... Zhiqipeng was also puzzled and looked at Yuan Feng. Inside the formation, there's only Chao Wu's soul essence. Can Chao Wu condense a core? Yuan Feng was completely confused. Could it be those cultivators who appeared just now? Hu suddenly asked. Impossible. Although Yuan Feng didn't see their faces clearly, he could clearly see their cultivation bases and flatly denied it. They're all in the initial stage of foundation establishment. How can Chao Wu condense a core in such a short time? What should we do? Just wait like this? Man Yin frowned. Yuan Feng smiled bitterly and said helplessly, Elder Man, why are you talking nonsense? No matter who condenses a core inside, the surroundings are controlled by the celestial phenomenon. Our divine senses can't even get close, so how can we do anything else? But if Chao Wu condenses a core inside, I'm afraid our plan will change. Hu was somewhat anxious. Yuan Feng frowned slightly and said unhappily, Elder Hu, if Chao Wu condenses a core, what do we have to be afraid of? Moreover, if it's Chao Wu condensing a core, would I need to make such a big fuss? Hu's face reddened, and she didn't say anything else. Let's wait first, Yuan Feng said with a smile. It's just a core condensation. It won't be a big hindrance to our actions. Elder Yuan's words are reasonable. Although Man Yin said this, she still felt strange when she saw the fist-sized crystal fly into the altar. As for Xiao Hua, who was below the altar, he was safe and sound at this moment. Because the foundation establishment celestial phenomenon had confined the surroundings, those seemingly endless vengeful spirits were all confined in midair, unable to move. The Phoenix Dharma body was also suspended above Xiao Hua's head, not waiting for him to move. Xiao Hua's entire person was sitting cross-legged, taking the foundation establishment pill, while converting the true qi absorbed into his body into true essence. Other people might take an hour or two to build their foundation, but Xiao Hua took an entire day and night to build his foundation. He took a total of 360 foundation building pills in the space, which was exactly the number of great circulations. Only then did the true energy in his body turn into true essence. Afterwards, the heaven and earth spiritual qi that entered his body was also refined by the Heart Sutra, turning into true essence that circulated within his meridians. Just as Xiao Hua stopped taking the foundation establishment pill and checked the condition of his body, he suddenly discovered that in the center of his lower dantian, there was a virtual point that was much lower than a grain of rice. It was slowly rotating. What is this? Could it be a gold core? Xiao Hua was shocked and thought to himself, but it's different from a gold core. It's a virtual point. Could it be because there was something just now, that something appeared in my dantian because of Ancestor Gen's core condensation? However, Xiao Hua was very clear that this was almost an impossible matter. The comprehension of core condensation was only the comprehension of breaking through the realm. It definitely would not increase the realm of a cultivator. But if that was not the case, then what was the reason? Forget it. Xiao Hua secretly shook his head. I'd better wait for the foundation establishment restriction to disappear, then quickly think of a way to escape from here. Sigh, this hateful restriction, even I can't break through it. Otherwise, I could borrow the power of the celestial phenomenon and escape. What was hateful was not only the foundation establishment restriction, there was also the celestial phenomenon that shocked Xiao Hua even more. It was gathering in the sky above the flame forest mountains that had already condensed into lava. In the sky above, the dark red clouds became denser and denser. Threads of heavenly lightning, as thick as a thumb, were faintly jumping about. When the thunderclouds pressed down on the fire lake, the power of the heavenly lightning had already enveloped the entire altar. This is bad. The first to sense it was Yuan Feng and the other elders. With a sweep of his divine sense, he was greatly shocked. He shouted loudly, "Disciples, quickly store your spirit beasts into your spirit storage pouches. You all also sit on the ground. You can only hold your breath and concentrate. You're not allowed to operate your heart techniques or release your divine sense. This is a spirit beast. The lightning tribulation of core condensation has nothing to do with us." When the disciples heard this, they hurriedly stored their spirit beasts. Following Yuan Feng's instructions, they distanced themselves from the altar and sat cross-legged on the ground. "Elder Yuan, who you transmitted her voice. When did the lightning tribulation appear when a spirit beast is core condensation? From what I know, I'm afraid that the lightning tribulation will only appear when it's out of shape, right?" Yuan Feng smiled bitterly. He looked around and also transmitted his voice. "How would I know? I've only read some foreign books when I went to millions of Meng mountains. When ancient demonic beasts evolve, there will be a crimson lightning tribulation. Look at the crimson color of the dark clouds in the sky right now. It's somewhat similar to the crimson lightning tribulation." "Io, could it be that the Chao Wu is out of shape?" But you said abruptly. However, as soon as she finished speaking, before Man Yun and the others could reply, she blushed. It was obvious that the Chao Wu's soul essence was suppressed under the formation. Without the support of its fleshly body, how could the Chao Wu be in shape? Yuan Feng quickly smoothed things over and said with a smile, "It's all my fault for not explaining clearly. Other than the Chao Wu's soul essence, there shouldn't be any other spirit beast under the altar. However, because the Chao Wu is a ferocious beast, the living beings it devours can't enter the 6 paths and can't be reincarnated. There should be many souls controlled by the Chao Wu's soul essence under the altar." "Souls?" As expected, Man Yun said in astonishment. "It's said that such otherworldly items are necessary for fiendish cultivators. If we have any fiendish artifacts, it will be of great use. Even if we have fiendish artifacts, we can't refine them without fiendish cultivation techniques." Who you said, "Moreover, we extracted the Chao Wu's soul essence. Those vengeful souls dissipated. We can treat it as a great merit." "Ha. Elder Hu, our Dao sect only cultivates Dao techniques, not merit." Zhi laughed. Just as he was laughing, he heard a series of muffled sounds of heavenly thunder. And no, a strand of lightning thinner than a strand of hair fell down. It rushed straight through the fire lake, passed through the stone wall, and entered the altar. Xiaohua, who was inside the black chi, had already completed his foundation establishment. The meridians in his body were incomparably stable. Water-like true essence flowed smoothly in his meridians. Xiaohua only waved his hand and shot out the fireball technique with incomparable familiarity. A fireball of the same size as before, but the fire's spiritual energy inside was condensed several times over, was born from his hand. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over the fireball. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He said to himself, "No wonder Master always emphasized foundation establishment. Foundation establishment's true essence really can't be compared to true chi. Although I already had a certain concept before, when I really built my foundation, I really had true essence. Only then did I understand the profoundness within. My magic power, I don't know how many times deeper than before. Xiao Hua's face immediately revealed a sinister smile. I took 360 foundation establishment pills to build my foundation. How can I compare to ordinary cultivators? Before building my foundation, I already had the ability to contend against ordinary late-stage foundation establishment cultivators. Then what about after building my foundation? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but feel his blood boil. He raised his hand and was about to throw the fireball at those vengeful souls that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws again. However, just as the fireball was thrown out, a heavenly might even more fierce than before emerged around Xiao Hua. Everything was unable to move. This is what's going on. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. The true essence that had just been born in his body seemed to have solidified. It seemed as if it couldn't flow. He really didn't understand. Since he had already built his foundation, was there still anything that couldn't be done? Rumble, rumble, rumble. A burst of thunder resounded in Xiao Hua's ears and even in his heart. A burst of indescribable fear emerged from Xiao Hua's heart. This is heavenly lightning? Soundless lightning? Xiao Hua had experienced the soundless lightning in the myriad Thunder Valley and immediately had some understanding. Could it be that Foundation Establishment also has a lightning tribulation? A vague imprint related to the lightning tribulation appeared in Xiao Hua's memory. It was a kind of fear, a kind of joy, and a kind of worship. Oh my, how do I know so much? Xiao Hua was once again puzzled. Chow Chow from before was also like that. How do I know? Could it be the fire ape's soul essence? Just as Xiao Hua's puzzlement emerged, he saw a heavenly might descend from the sky. A scarlet lightning net sprinkled down. Fear, excitement, pleasant surprise. All kinds of emotions actually emerged from Xiao Hua's phoenix dharma body. On Xiao Hua's body that was firmly pressed down, those 13,200 tiny dots also had a kind of eager impulse. They wanted to break free from Xiao Hua's bones and rush into the phoenix dharma body. Kachacha. Zzzz, zzzz. A burst of complicated sounds rang out. The scarlet lightning net first fell on Xiao Hua's phoenix dharma body. That phoenix dharma body was instantly defeated and scattered into 13,200 tiny red dots. These tiny dots only had tiny blazing flames at this moment. The fine threads of lightning struck in. First, they pressed the spiral-shaped netherworld wind into the tiny dots. Then, the lightning also condensed into the tiny dots. Wind, fire, and lightning faintly flashed within the tiny dots. Just as the threads of lightning passed through the phoenix dharma body, those 13,200 tiny dots flashed with a fiery light. Like a phoenix undergoing nirvana, a hurricane was born within the tiny dots. However, within this hurricane, there were more threads of fire and lightning. The phoenix dharma body was gradually taking shape again. Ouch! Xiao Hua couldn't help but cry out miserably. He felt the same as the phoenix dharma body. The phoenix dharma body was defeated like this. It was as if his body was being torn apart. How could he endure it? However, his consciousness was so clear that he couldn't faint even if he wanted to. Every bit of pain was transmitted to his mind. This was an inhumane torture that Xiao Hua had never experienced before. Bone erosion and soul search. I'm afraid this is the only way, right? Xiao Hua felt that death was better than living. However, this was merely the beginning. Below the phoenix dharma body was the Buddha's Saraira. The scarlet lightning net also mercilessly struck the Saraira. Similarly, ZZT sound rang out. The lightning net covered the Buddha's Saraira. A kind of numbing and itchy feeling was immediately born. Just as this feeling was born, Xiao Hua felt as if he was reborn. However, immediately after, it transformed into an even more indescribable pain. Xiao Hua wished that he could grow 1,000,000 hands and scratch the Buddha's Saraira. This numbing itch really pierced his heart. Chapter 1901. As this feeling deepened, the Buddha Saraira, which was about to disappear, gradually regained its golden light. The damaged parts were also repaired. Buddha Saraira can actually be cultivated like this? Xiao Hua's heart was filled with thousands of hands, but he couldn't reach out. He could only hatefully think about it. But in an instant, Xiao Hua thought of the Saraira he got from Misty Mountain. Fortunately, Xiao Hua only had his physical body and couldn't move. His mind still had some freedom. Without hesitation, he took out the two Sarairas from the space and threw them into the lightning net. Sure enough, the moment the Saraira touched the lightning net, it melted. However, the melted liquid didn't repair the Saraira like Xiao Hua thought. Instead, it gathered under the Saraira's feet, forming a thin layer. Wong, the final lightning net finally landed on Xiao Hua's body. At this time, Xiao Hua didn't feel any pain. Even if the lightning net tore his body apart, he was torn into 132 million small pieces. Xiao Hua's entire body became a bloody mess that people couldn't bear to look at. He could only watch coldly. This demonic beast's physical body tribulation was really too fierce. Xiao Hua thought that his body was already incomparably strong, but it was so easily torn apart. Fortunately, just as his flesh was about to fly, the scarlet red bones with a tinge of orange emitted a gentle light. The bones tightly absorbed the 132 million small dots. Even the scattered blood didn't lose a single drop. And these small dots were like greedy babies, swallowing the lightning threads scattered in his body one by one. As the lightning threads were swallowed, the light on the bones gave birth to a healing power. His body was repaired bit by bit, and the blood was once again drawn into his blood vessels. Roar! It was a faint dragon's roar. Just when Xiao Hua thought that the lightning tribulation was over, his meridians moved again. The dragon transformation art madly circulated again. The lightning net passed through his body and finally landed on Xiao Hua's dragon veins. Piercing pain, sore and itchy, his meridians were torn apart again. Xiao Hua was speechless. I'm only at Foundation Establishment. Another hour passed, but there was no more movement within the formation. Woof! A light sound broke the tranquility of the formation. Less than 30 meters to the left of Xiao Hua, a crimson-black Chao's soul essence appeared. This soul essence wasn't large, only a foot long, and there were several strands of lightning lingering around it. Obviously, it was affected by Xiao Hua's inexplicable lightning tribulation. Chao, and I, soul essence. Xiao Hua immediately understood that the lightning tribulation was coming to an end. Xiao Hua's body was being repaired, and he couldn't move for the time being. However, he could see with his naked eye. What's suppressed under this array formation is the Chao Li's soul essence. Those vengeful souls are also being driven by the Chao Li's soul essence. Listening to the sound of the Chao tongue's soul essence, it seems that the damage is not light. I think I have a chance. Immediately, Xiao Hua looked around and looked at the countless vengeful souls from before. Most of them had already been destroyed by the lightning tribulation. The remaining ones were mostly fish that slipped through the net or people with tyrannical cultivation when they were alive. Great, Xiao Hua was pleasantly surprised. However, he couldn't move at the moment and couldn't use his divine ability to kill the Chao Li's soul essence. Just as Xiao Hua was feeling disappointed, 5 lumps of light that weren't brilliant appeared near the barking. As soon as the 5 lumps of light appeared, they immediately surrounded the Chao Li's soul essence. The 5 colored lumps of light constantly attacked the Chao Li's soul essence. With every attack, the Chao Li's soul essence would tremble, seeming to be heavily injured. Five spirits. Xiao Hua was dumbstruck again. He moaned, Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, and Qilin. Heavens, this array formation. Where the hell is it? Io, that's not right. That doesn't seem to be a Qilin. Xiao Hua observed for a moment and immediately realized that something was wrong. The lumps of the 5 spirits were all in the shape of the 5 spirits. Only the Qilin's soul essence couldn't help but be fat. It was actually somewhat similar to the dust-repelling beast. Woof! At this moment, the Qiali moved. The lightning threads around its body already disappeared without a trace. At the same time that the vengeful souls flew around it, its body also emitted a black and red lumps of light to attack the 5 spirits. Damn it, hurry up and move. Xiao Hua used all his strength to break free from the shackles. Unfortunately, this was the shackles of the lightning tribulation, the might of heaven and earth. How could he move? And the vengeful souls that were forced back by the lightning tribulation just now were flying towards Xiao Hua's Buddha Sarira. Fortunately, after being baptized by the lightning tribulation, the golden light of the Buddha Sarira seemed to be even more dignified. Previously, if the vengeful souls had to eat 10 mouthfuls to transcend, now they only needed 1 mouthful to repent. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Xiao Hua was finally able to move. He opened his mouth without any hesitation, and the dream execution flew out, transforming into 8 sword lights that rushed towards the Qiao Li's soul essence. At the same time, the phoenix Dharma body also let out a cry and flapped its wings, grabbing at the soul essence with its sharp claws. Naturally, the first layer of Xiao Hua's Buddha Sarira was also used. After going through the lightning tribulation, the word Lin became even more powerful. It was 3 times bigger than before, and one word could transcend 3 times the number of vengeful souls. At this moment, the 5 spirits had been knocked around by the Qiao Li, and their lumps had become much weaker, especially the Qilin. Not only had its lumps become weaker, its speed had also become much slower. The Qiao Li was also cunning. When it saw the Qilin was weak, it focused on attacking it. The 5 spirits formed the 5 Skandhas formation of spirit awakening. If the Qilin was broken, the formation would be broken, and the Qiao Li would naturally be able to escape. It had to be said that spirit husbandry sex method was like asking a tiger for its skin. If they were slightly careless, and there was no need to say careless, they had basically gotten themselves caught in a trap of their own making. Xiao Hua's 8 sword lights had joined in at the right time. The power of karma was what the Qiao Li feared, and it could also injure the Qiao Li. Therefore, wherever the sword lights reached, the Qiao Li had no choice but to deal with them. Of course, it was only to deal with them. Xiao Hua's cultivation was far too inferior to the Qiao Li's. Even though he had just entered foundation establishment and his strength had increased greatly, it was still not enough to deal with the Qiao Li. The phoenix Dharma body flew over, and its seemingly huge body and seemingly sharp phoenix claws were produced with a bark from the Qiao Li's soul essence. The phoenix Dharma body hurriedly spread its wings to resist the binding force. How could the claws reach down? Seeing this, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew out. With a buzzing sound, it smashed towards the Qiao Li's soul essence. However, the truth was not out of Xiao Hua's expectations. The cloud of the cloud-suppressing seal smashed towards the Qiao Li. Although the Qiao Li was apprehensive of the power of karma, he was not afraid. He dodged slightly and dodged it. The cloud-suppressing seal was unable to succeed. Since the cloud-suppressing seal was ineffective, Xiao Hua did not waste his efforts. He used all sorts of magic treasures like the Yi-Yang fan and the Fireball Talisman. Unfortunately, none of them were effective. Instead, they angered the Qiao Li, and waves of binding force enveloped Xiao Hua. Forget it. Xiao Hua saw that all his methods were useless and could only use the phoenix Dharma body. Chapter 1902. Not to mention that Xiao Hua saw that all kinds of methods were useless. He could only use the phoenix Dharma body and do his best to circulate the Buddhist Dharma cultivation method to save the souls of the dead and reduce the burden of the 5 spirits. Among the 5 spirits, the azure dragon let out a dragon roar, shaking the black fog of the dead souls away a little. Then, the azure dragon's light ball suddenly elongated and the brilliance suddenly converged. Like the azure dragon swinging its tail, It began to rotate in the air, and a strange fluctuation was born. At the same time, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise also roared as if they had received an order. The 4 light balls immediately began to rotate, and 3 different kinds of fluctuations were born. Then, the fat Qilin let out a weak cry, and then slowly rotated again. The brilliance of the light ball was also intermittent, and the fluctuations it produced were also intermittent. The 5 kinds of fluctuations intertwined, giving birth to a new kind of fluctuation. It was like a net that covered the Chow and I from top to bottom. Although the Chow and I was rarely afraid, it was suppressed by the 5 spirits. No matter how hard it tried, it was unable to escape. Under the cover of this fluctuation, the Chow Ni's soul essence became smaller and smaller. In this way, the entanglement lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. The Chow and I opened its mouth slightly, and with a woof, a black gas rushed towards the Qilin's light ball. Wah! It was as if boiling water was poured on top of ice and snow. The light ball that the Chow and I had been attacking for a long time suddenly flickered. The Qilin, the light ball, clearly could not hold on. Not good. Xiao Hua cursed in his heart. Seeing the other 4 spirits' brilliance dim at the same time as the Qilin's brilliance, the net-like fluctuation also began to tremble. He knew that the 5 spirits would not be able to hold on for long. When Xiao Hua was anxious, he thought of the dust-repelling beast in his space that he did not know what to do. Let's give it a try, Xiao Hua thought, and with a wave of his hand, the huge dust-repelling beast was taken out by Xiao Hua. The originally ordinary dust-repelling beast's corpse, once it entered the array, the sharp horn on its forehead immediately emitted a gentle brilliance. This brilliance was incomparably pure, and a kind of holy power immediately spread out. When Xiao Xiu's soul essence was illuminated by the brilliance, it was extremely alarmed. It wanted to hide in the darkness, but the 5 spirits had already formed an array and suppressed it. There was a limit to its ability to hide. When Xiao Hua saw this, he was overjoyed. He resisted the shackles of the Chao Ti and flew towards the place where the 5 spirits were. When he got close, the Qilin let out a long cry like a horse and rushed into the body of the Chao Ti beast with incomparable speed. When the Qilin light came out again, it was already several times stronger than before. The brilliance was even more brilliant. Moreover, the image of the Qilin inside was really like a Qilin. It was no longer as fat as before. This is bad. Xiao Hua didn't have time to cheer. In his field of vision, he saw that Chao's soul essence actually took advantage of the fact that the 5 spirits' coordination was a bit uncoordinated to break free and fly down. Io, could it be that there's something else beneath me? Xiao Hua's divine sense swept out. Now that Xiao Hua had reached the Foundation establishment realm, his divine sense had greatly improved. Although he was restricted by the array formation, he could still see the bottom. The place where Chao Ti had escaped to was a flaw in the array formation. There was still a faint lightning glow at this flaw. It had actually been broken by the lightning tribulation just now. Chao Ti wants to escape. Xiao Hua was slightly shocked, but then a trace of joy appeared in his heart. If Chao Ti's soul essence had escaped, wouldn't he be able to escape as well? Unfortunately, just as Xiao Hua was scheming in his heart, hundreds and thousands of suction forces suddenly appeared above his head and directly covered Chao Ti's soul essence. The disciples of Spirit Husbandry sect were already waiting impatiently outside the altar. Under the command of Elder Yuan Feng, they all released the spirit-devouring cultivation technique. Elder Yuan Feng was indeed a genius. This spirit-devouring cultivation technique was the nemesis of all soul essences. Even if Chao Ti was a ferocious beast and its soul essence was extremely ferocious, the thousands of spirit-devouring cultivation technique still easily absorbed Chao Ti's soul essence. Woof! Chao Ti barked in panic. If it was under normal circumstances, it might not necessarily have no means to escape. However, under Xiao Hua's lightning tribulation, it was extremely weak and couldn't escape at all. It stopped at the flaw in the array formation, and the 5 spirits surrounded it. Chao Ti then charged towards the brilliance of the 5 spirits a few times. Although it was able to gain some benefits every time, the suction force of the thousands of spirit-devouring cultivation technique constantly tore Chao Ti's soul essence away. Woof woof, Chao Ti barked again. The few souls left in the array formation gathered towards Chao Ti, wanting to help Chao Ti resist the spirit-devouring cultivation technique. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. You doghead, you still want to be lucky at this moment. After saying that, the Buddha Sarara stood up and chanted mantras as it flew in front of Chao Ti, blocking the souls from gathering together. It was unknown how many souls had passed through the Buddha Sarira. The golden color that had been baptized by the lightning tribulation was tattered and almost dimmed. Luckily, the 2 Sariras that Xiao Hua had sent into the Buddha Sarira had turned into a thin layer of golden liquid that stopped at the feet of the Buddha Sarira. Every time the Buddha Sarira's golden body was exhausted, it would rush towards the Buddha Sarira along with Xiao Hua's exquisite scripture, repairing the golden body. There was still some golden liquid under the Buddha Sarira. From the looks of it, it should be able to last until Chao Ti was torn apart and absorbed by the spirit-devouring cultivation technique. At this moment, another 4 even more ferocious spirit-devouring cultivation technique entered the array formation. It was executed by Yuan Feng and the other elders. These 4 were even more powerful than the previous ones. Once they absorbed Chao Ti's soul essence, in less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Chao Ti's soul essence had shrunk by more than half. Chao Ti was also unlucky. The 5 spirits were originally the methods of spirit husbandry sect, but if it wasn't for Xiao Hua's Buddha Sarira and the lightning tribulation, spirit husbandry sect wouldn't have been able to defend against the ferocious Chao Ti. Just Xiao Hua's final lightning tribulation had destroyed 70% of Chao Ti's soul essence. Otherwise, the 5 spirits wouldn't have been unable to find Chao Ti's soul essence until the very end. Of course, if it wasn't for the 5 spirits of spirit husbandry sect and the spirit-devouring cultivation technique, Xiao Hua probably wouldn't have been a match for Chao Ti with 30% of its strength. In the end, Xiao Hua would only have been a dead spirit of Chao Ti's soul essence. However, spirit husbandry sect on the surface and Xiao Hua in the dark directly led to the end of Chao Ti's soul essence. Seeing the 4 powerful suction forces, Chao Ti's soul essence suddenly shrunk, causing more than half of the spirit-devouring cultivation technique to fail. Furthermore, when Chao Ti's soul essence expanded once again, it continued to expand. With a loud bang, not only did it break free from the restraint of the 5 spirits, it also broke free from the suction force. Xiao Hua wasn't the only one who was shocked. All the disciples of spirit husbandry sect outside the sacrificial altar were also surprised. Quick, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yuan Feng suddenly came to a realization. These soul essences don't have Chao Ti's imprint, both spirit beasts, and I can use them. As he said that, he sat down cross-legged and used the spirit-devouring cultivation technique to refine these soul essences. Man Yun and the other elders and disciples were all surprised. This was definitely an unexpected surprise. Therefore, everyone sat down cross-legged and worked hard, no longer mentioning the Chao Ti's soul essence in the sacrificial altar. Chao Ti wants to escape. This was the first reaction of Xiao Hua, who was inside the sacrificial altar. He hurriedly used his spiritual sense to scan for the flaws in the formation. However, what shocked Xiao Hua was that the 5 spirits had already blocked the flaws, and Chao Ti's soul essence wasn't there at all. Xiao Hua was rather surprised. Where did the doghead go? Just as this thought appeared, a trace of vigilance came from the phoenix spell body. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly used his spiritual sense to scan the sky. He saw an extremely dim Chao Ti's soul essence flying towards him. Damn it, your opponent is the 5 spirits, not me. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly used the bright thunder escape to dodge. However, very naturally, Chao Ti's power of confinement appeared from all sides and suppressed Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua tried his best to urge the phoenix spell body. The spell body flapped its wings and blocked left and right, wanting to block Chao Ti's soul essence. At the same time, the five spirits also discovered the abnormality here and rushed over from the flaws. Woof, Chao Ti barked. It seemed to have dodged the phoenix spell body's obstruction and was about to rush into Xiao Hua's body. However, just as the five spirits were about to surround it, it suddenly retreated and quickly flew towards the flaws in the formation. Damn it, this dog head actually knows how to feint. Xiao Hua's little heart trembled in fear. Just as he was about to rejoice, a strange situation appeared again. That Qilin light seemed to have expected Chao Ti's actions. It actually took a step forward and flew in front of Chao Ti. The horse neighed and crashed into Chao Ti, blocking Chao Ti's escape route. Chao Ti's soul essence weakened again and had no choice but to fly towards Xiao Hua, dust-warding beast. You fat pig! Xiao Hua was furious. If I had known, I wouldn't have taken you out. The five spirits actually surrounded Chao Ti and Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was flustered. Just now, all his magic treasures were useless. Now that Chao Ti was close to him, what should he do? Spiritual fire, seeing Chao Ti close in and Xiao Hua release the dream executioner. Xiao Hua thought of the scarlet spiritual fire ignited by the fire origin. Pooh! Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He opened his mouth and spat out a scarlet spiritual fire. That spiritual fire was absolutely bewitching. As soon as it flew out of his body, it immediately scattered a faint light throughout the entire space. Not only was Chao Ti afraid, even the five spirits stopped in their respective positions and didn't dare to go forward. Damn it, this spiritual fire is actually so powerful. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. His hand began to form a shaky hand seal. He pointed his finger, wanting to activate the spirit fire. But just as Xiao Hua was about to activate his magic power, the true essence in his body began to flow rapidly. His magic power began to flow uncontrollably into the hand seal. This was the first time Xiao Hua used some ancient fire control divine art. He didn't expect it to consume so much magic power. Only when half of the magic power in his body was used did the hand seal in his hand take shape. Go! Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and formed the hand seal. A thin line of fire flew out from the spiritual fire and drew a beautiful arc in the air, directly piercing Chao Ti's soul essence. Woof! With a miserable cry, Chao Ti's soul essence was ignited. His entire body tumbled in the air. When the bewitching red light was extinguished, Chao Ti's soul essence was only left with a thumb-sized shadow. At this time, the phoenix body let out a long cry and stretched out its beak. It opened its mouth and sucked in Chao Ti's soul essence. Roar! One of the five spirits, the Azure Dragon, also let out a dragon cry. It seemed to be dissatisfied with the actions of the phoenix body. Roar! For some unknown reason, Xiao Hua's meridians also moved. Xiao Hua involuntarily opened his mouth and let out a long cry. Moreover, the spiritual fire in his hand also suddenly moved. At this time, the Azure Dragon was speechless. It watched as the phoenix body sucked Chao Ti's soul essence into its body. Just like before, when it absorbed the fire ape's soul essence, Chao Ti's soul essence also flew into a small dot and stopped moving. Then, a huge amount of memories rushed into Xiao Hua's mind. It's like this again. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Following the pain in his head, he once again sealed the majority of his memories. Seeing Chao Ti's soul essence disappear, the five spirits circled around Xiao Hua for a while. Then they flew above the spell formation and stood in different positions, no longer moving. Chapter 1903. Xiao Hua withdrew the spiritual fire and flew to the weak point of the formation. He first looked around, but did not rush to escape. Instead, he activated the Buddha, Sarira, and continued to transcend the remaining dead souls. As Xiao Hua transcended the dead souls, the Buddha fire in the Buddha heart within the Buddha Sarira had already taken shape. Until several hours later, all the dead souls had been transcended. There was not a trace of black energy left in the entire formation. Another few hundred strands of spirit-devouring cultivation technique rushed into the formation. The 5 spirits on the formation also began to move. Xiao Hua knew that the formation was about to be opened. Damn it, even though my cultivation is at foundation establishment right now, it can't compare to Xiangmin. This bastard, with such a ruthless method, he must have already succeeded. If I rush out now, I will definitely fall into his hands. Why don't I escape first and see if there's a chance later? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua did not hesitate and immediately rushed out of the formation's flaw. Outside was still the bottom of the fire lake, but because Xiao Hua had built his foundation, he had absorbed all of the fire-type spiritual energy. Now, it had turned into lava, and Xiao Hua used the earth escape technique to easily escape from it. You are ready. On the altar, Elder Yuan Feng instructed, the Chao Wu's soul essence is definitely not this little. There must be some remaining soul essence hidden in this formation. Once you see any soul essence, immediately use the spirit-devouring cultivation technique. Immediately after, Yuan Feng used the technique. The 5 spirit flag fluttered in the wind, and a 5-colored brilliance shot out and rushed into the altar. Immediately after, the surface of the altar that was surging with black mist just now once again turned into 5 sparkling and translucent spirits. Io, this Qilin seems to be wrong. Elder Yuan Feng, who was in charge of the array formation, was very sensitive. Then, without thinking, he waved the 5 spirit flags. The 5 spirits actually flew up from the altar and rushed into the 5 spirit flags, revealing that there was probably a space of several miles under the altar. However, when the formation opened, the space was also revealed, but the space was completely empty. It was as clean as a thief leaving a building. This, Yuan Feng and the other 3 elders scanned with their divine senses. How could they not know? They could not help but be dumbfounded. Elder Yuan, there seems to be a flaw in the formation, Mannion said in a very experienced manner. Yuan Feng scanned with his divine sense and gritted his teeth. No wonder, even though we've gained a lot of benefits, but we haven't gotten most of the spirit beast's soul essences yet. It turns out that this bastard escaped from the array's flaw. It must have the help of other spirit beast's soul essences. Let's chase after it quickly. After he finished speaking, he instructed a portion of the disciples to clean up the mess. A portion of the disciples, under the lead of the other elders, went ahead and chased after Xiao Hua. Then, he put away the 5 spirit flags and sealed the array formation as before. After that, he brought the other disciples and chased after Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't go far. After the spirit husbandry sect disciples left to clean up the mess, the underground caves were empty. Xiao Hua suddenly appeared in one of the caves. He looked down at the lifelike sacrificial altar and thought to himself, spirit husbandry sect? It was the spirit husbandry sect. How is this possible? It's normal for them to covet the soul essence of the Chao Ao. But why was I sent here by Xiangmin? Could it be the formation? Xiao Hua had eavesdropped on the conversation of the spirit husbandry sect disciples who were cleaning up the mess. He already knew most of the truth. However, he didn't expect that he would mess up the spirit husbandry sect's plan. Furthermore, he could faintly feel that the reason he was sent here was related to the formation. After all, Xiangmin's plan and the spirit husbandry sect's plan were different. If Xiangmin had joined forces with the spirit husbandry sect, she wouldn't have joined forces with Zhenyi. Since that's the case, Xue and eldest senior brother definitely aren't here. Xiao Hua frowned. Then they should be the chasing thunder beast, right? But where is the chasing thunder beast? Xiao Hua waved his hand and was about to take out the sun-moon corona. However, it was a pity that the sun-moon corona was no longer in his space. How did he take it out? I'm afraid I've fallen into the 5-elemental soul capturing formation. Xiao Hua was a little regretful. However, a hint of joy appeared in his eyes soon after. He sat cross-legged in the mountain cave and released his phoenix, celestial body, and divine sense after a while. Xiao Hua opened his eyes and flew out of the cave. He flew into midair and looked at the depths of flame forest swamp. It was a completely different direction from where Spirit Husbandry Sect was chasing. He frowned and said, "The sun-moon corona was refined by me, and the fire ape spirit essence is also in the phoenix spell body. However, why can't I sense the exact location of the sun-moon corona? Why can I only sense it vaguely? If it was in someone else's storage bag, I wouldn't even be able to sense it vaguely. It must be in Shue's hands. Forget it. No matter what, how can I not care about Shue's safety?" Xiao Hua chuckled and suddenly flew into the air. The bright thunder escape was executed very easily. After Xiao Hua entered the Foundation establishment realm, how could his divine ability be predicted using common sense? The true essence in Xiao Hua's body flowed smoothly like mercury, and a comfortable feeling that he had never experienced before was born in his meridians. Abundant magic power surged in his body, and Xiao Hua had an impulse. He felt that even if there was a golden core cultivator in front of him, he could still fight for him. However, after thinking deeper, Xiao Hua felt a little discouraged. Currently, all of his techniques were chi refinement spells. Not to mention golden core, he didn't even have many foundation establishment techniques. How could he fight with a golden core cultivator? At this moment, a golden core cultivator's divine sense swept over, and Xiao Hua had no choice but to stop and wait respectfully in the air. After a while, an unfamiliar cultivator swaggered over and looked at Xiao Hua and said coldly, "Which sect are you from? You just entered the Foundation establishment realm, and you dare to come to the depths of the flame forest swamp? Do you not want to live anymore? Senior, please know, I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect and followed Martial Uncle Jinyi here. However, because we were separated by accident, I am here to find Martial Uncle Jinyi. May I know if Senior is my martial uncle?" Xiao Hua controlled his temper and asked respectfully, "Imperial Thunder Sect? Jinyi?" The Golden Core cultivator was clearly happy when he heard Zhun Ye's name. He said with a smile, "I was wondering why Martial Nephew's flying speed was different from others. So you are a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Does Martial Nephew know the lightning escape technique?" Xiao Hua saw the Golden Core cultivator's attitude and suddenly became a Martial Nephew. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He bowed and said, "Junior's lightning escape technique is only at the entry level. It can't be said that I know it. It's already not bad." The Golden Core cultivator said with a smile, "May I know if fellow Taoist Zhun Ye's lightning escape technique has reached mastery?" Xiao Hua really couldn't continue chattering with this cultivator. He said with a smile, "Junior doesn't know about Martial Uncle Jinyi, but I'm afraid he hasn't reached mastery either." And the Golden Core cultivator nodded and said, "I am Xie Zhiqian from the Immortal Ascension Sect. I have long heard of the Imperial Thunder Sect's lightning escape technique. I have also long heard of fellow Taoist Zhun Ye's reputation." Xiao Hua was happy when he heard this. He said with a smile, "My martial uncle is probably in front. If Senior Xie has time, there is no harm in letting Junior lead the way. You will definitely be able to see my martial uncle." That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.